We are live and totally ready to talk
What are we
about
doing?
Red Rising. I've invited the president of the Severo fan club to join us this evening. Thank you. Would you like to say a few words on behalf of
Oh,
your
I'm supposed
group?
to talk now?
Yeah.
Hi, I like Severo. Hello. I'm Alex. I do YouTube stuff sometimes, I promise. I'm not as active anymore, but I'm here to talk about Red Rising because it's amazing.
Would you like to
So,
introduce
yeah.
yourself? What fan club do you represent, Angela?
I don't know if I read this for fandom. I read it more for the mess. I'm really a fan of the mess, like the drama, all of the chaos. I guess the one that annoys me the least is Mustang in this book specifically. I don't know if that holds. I can't remember my opinions on Mustang.
Did you guys know that Mustang is inspired by Pierce Brown's mother?
No,
No, that's
I'm
I
not
feel
best
like-
friends with him like you are.
I feel like Freud would have something to say about that.
probably like that's a thing. So she annoys me the least. I really love Pax. I was really sad because I forgot what happens to Pax.
So this, by the way, everyone, this live will have spoilers for Red Rising.
Pax sprains an ankle.
He's
It is
and
my-
has to
The most
be-
tragic ankle
Be on
sprainage.
bed rest for a few minutes.
But the entire time he's on bed rest, he continues, Pax Autolemanus!
That is the best thing about Pax is he's a Pokemon.
He's Steve Holt
fantastic.
from Arrested Development.
He's who?
Steve Holt from Arrested Development.
He's just such a great version of his archetype. Like, there's no depth, but I just love that character in these types of dramatic situations. He's
Mhm.
lovely.
Well, another piece of information. Do you guys know about the Hat of Death?
Yes, only
Oh,
because you told me.
That
So when
Pierce
I
Brown
read
puts
books,
all
I know
the-
nothing about the author. I don't read into their
Well-
biography. I don't know anything about these people. But
you
you
could
have
have
told me.
attended an event, or maybe I did already tell you.
You told me.
So he puts all the character names in a hat, and then that's how he decides what characters die. He just pulls a name, and whatever it says, that's who he kills. So he originally had planned not planned because he's a pantser, but had in mind that he would have all kinds of lengthy buddy cop adventures of Darrow and Pax. But then he pulled Pax's name out of the hat and was like, "The hat has spoken." So sorry.
I kind of like that because
and whose name had he pulled initially, Leanna?
What?
Didn't he pull Severo at one point and was like, no?
I don't think so. Maybe.
Or
I think someone
maybe
has
it was
asked him, is Severo's name even in the
Yeah.
hat? And he's like, no comment.
As it was.
No, I mean, I kind of like that because lately I've been reading a lot of series where it's very obvious when someone's going to die because the author's planned it. It's like, why is this person getting so much page time when they normally don't?
Mhm.
You know.
Whereas with Pierce Brown, it's like, I'm as surprised as you guys. I did not plan for this. Ain't that just the way?
Or another series when it's like, oh, these people are starting to talk about kids or love. That person's definitely going to die. This came out of nowhere. You're talking about settling down. You're definitely not making it to the next book.
At the most inopportune time, you're discussing this. Okay.
I didn't realize that he didn't. I mean, I guess I don't keep track of when authors plan or don't plan because I figure as long as I don't notice your process, you did something right for you as an author. But I didn't know he was a pantser because it feels like it feels really like it makes sense.
He was complaining that he can't really be a full pantser with the new books because it's multiple POVs, so you kind of have to plan that. And he was like, "This is new territory for me because I have entirely pantsed the original trilogy."
That's
so
fun.
yeah, so yeah, Red Rising. How many times has each of us read Red Rising?
Just 2.
2.5, because the first time I ended up restarting, I think, the first time around when I almost DNF'd it. I almost DNF'd it, or I temporarily put it down. And I was like, this book is kind of shit. Because I really was not liking the compound words and how childish he felt at some points with the writing and just how edgy certain parts of it felt. I was just like, oh my God, why is this so bad? And then obviously going back and reading it now, I just love all of it. But yeah, the first time around, it was not great.
This is my 3rd time through, and I gave it 4 stars the first 2 times, and this time I gave it 5 stars.
I don't know what I gave it on my old rating scale because my old rating scale, I don't know how it works with my new rating scale because I read it in 2018 before I was on BookTube and back when I only read 25 books a year. And I feel like your rating scale is just really different when you read 25 books a year versus when you read 140 books a year. suddenly things get a little more granular. But
okay, with that little humble brag right there.
Mine doesn't. Mine stays exactly the same, where it's like, I liked it, I didn't like it.
I don't know. I mean, I like it, I think, as much as my first time. But, like, I don't know. It's just so weird reading it. Because when I first read it, I obviously didn't know anything about anything people didn't like about it. And this time I read it, it's like, I'm still having such a fun time. But yes, this is a very tired trope of just abusing women for the sake of showing, like, the patriarchal badness of this society. Like, it is like
abusing. It was pretty quick. I mean, just kidding. I'm
like,
just kidding.
So, but I never actually had an issue with the writing style like you did either time, because I mean,
there are
I
so
don't
many
know how
spare
serious he took
people.
this book. Yeah, there's a lot of extra people around.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely is a tired trope of, protagonist, significant other needs to die to be the jumping off point for their entire existence for the rest of the series. It does happen.
His own devices, Darrow would have just perpetuated the system and been happy about it.
Well, but also, so it's like, I know a lot of people have a problem with. So obviously we're like full spoilers for Red Rising. I already did the warning, but warning again.
This also happens really
for...
early, though.
I think it's on the back of the book.
Yeah,
like,
which I do think is like kind of upsetting.
You can't spoil the series by saying that Io dies. Like Io.
Oh no, they don't say die. It says his wife taken.
She got taken, and then.
But so like the reason it doesn't bother me that like maybe I don't know if not bother me is the right word, but the reason that like I don't regard it as a problem or forgive it or whatever is that I know that he said that the genesis of this whole story was that he was rereading Antigone for like the umpteenth time, and while reading Antigone thought to himself, what would it be like to love and be loved by somebody who chooses to be a martyr? Like, what does that do to you on a personal level, that like someone is choosing a cause over you as a person? And so like, since I know that that's like the genesis point for this entire story, then like that's who Io is like, it's exploring what it is to love a martyr. And so then like, yes, it is fridging. It's not fridging, but like, it's not just fridging. Like if I found, he was just like, how do I make Darrow better? I know, kill his wife. No, like the entire genesis of this story is like Io. Like that's how this whole story started. And so for me, like that makes a difference. It wasn't a casual fridging of a female character.
No, it's not. It's Wheel of Time episode 1 spoilers. It's not that level of fridging where it's just like, here's the person's wife and she's dead. Like there was more to it than that.
I think for me, that one was fine, mainly because I didn't even know about the genesis, but it's if I'm going to get mad at Pierce Brown for doing it, I have to get mad at a lot of authors for doing it. And it got me into the story quickly. So it was unfortunately effective because I'm used to that trope a lot. But I think the complaints I heard and that I understood, but again, didn't faze me that much, is when we're in the Institute, like the absolute abuse the female characters go through in the Institute versus their male counterparts is like aggressive. And like he chose to make this world patriarchal, I guess, even though the sovereign is a woman. And they're genetically manipulated. So it's a choice to make the females weaker in Pierce Brown's world. Like that was like an active creative choice, which I don't necessarily care about, but I can see why people take issue with.
Yeah, but I mean, to be fair, like men get treated horribly in this world too, and especially at the Institute where you have certain characters just like, I mean, you brought up Pax. Pax got stabbed like 50 times. Like,
yeah, I guess I don't know. I just feel like there was a lot more agency taken away.
Like, sure, but I mean, that's like a tired trope, right? Where it's like all these sci-fi settings must have some kind of like medieval hierarchy built into them. And then that comes along with like slaves.
Otherwise, it's just like
treating women like shit.
Yeah. It's just all nuclear bombs all the time.
It just happens in all these books, and I feel like that's because like fantasy does that so much too, where it's just like, here's medieval Europe again, and we know what that looks like. There's the king, and women get treated like shit. It's pretty tired. Well, obviously, I think that gets a lot better as the series goes on.
But I also think like arguably, and like this is giving him slightly too much credit because like I don't actually think this is fully the reason why it's that way. I think it was just like a by default thing that he wrote it that way. But again, another reason that it doesn't bother me that much is because arguably like this whole thing is about how the society is fucked. and how like Darrow is taking it down, and about how they're such hypocrites and they're such liars, and they think that they've created the perfect society, and Darrow is there to poke holes in every single one of their ideas. And the whole idea of Darrow's like rebellion is to bring about a more egalitarian society. And so having the society that you are against, that you're taking down, that you regard as like the bad way of structuring things, like they have slaves, they belittle women, they like that, all of their attitudes are the ones that we are fighting against. So like that's who has those attitudes. And so like while it is kind of tired and it is kind of like, of course, like how do you show they're evil? You have them be abusing women.
Because I mean,
but it's
like if they had genetically modified everyone to be perfect, they'd be like, who are you overthrowing then? Like your life sucks, but like if all these people are just genuinely great people, it would be like, well, why are you gonna overthrow them then? Like you're just kind of being a dick.
Yeah, no, I think so. Yeah, for me, it's like it's not my favorite because it is, I think, kind of tired, lazy world building, but it doesn't bother me because, like you said, it's like very obvious that like it's that bad because it's that messed up. Like it's very obvious, at least to me. It's like, although the back of the book, I think, gives Darrow too much credit. Driven by a longing for justice. I don't feel like Darrow's very driven for anything. I think he's just trying his best in this book, but
he's pretty driven by anger.
And this is where, I mean, like, so like going back to fridging briefly, like with most things in books, there is no thing that you should never do in a book. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can never kill a female character. It's like, because that's what it comes down to sometimes. It feels like anyway, when people are like, because that's what it sounds like. You're like, so I can never tragically kill a female character? Like, is it always fridging? And like, that's not true. And so the fact that I think it is handled with intention and care, and the fact that like this allows us to see something, because like it's not like just Darrow is like, well, he's just tragic now and we move on. Like it's a real part of his character that like she represents his past. He questions like whether or not she even loved him because she did martyr herself, and the fact that he loved her more than she loved him, and the fact that he feels that he's going to be disloyal to her memory if he has affection for anyone, let alone a gold. And then like we so rarely see a young protagonist have to go through like being a widower and second love, you know, that like having that you can find love again, that just, it's not that like you found your true love, that's it forever, you know, that like, and then over the course of this, not really spoilers, but like, I guess spoilers for the series, that like having to like work through the trauma of that and like what your relationship to that person was and how you've grown as a person past that, because like it was so long ago and you were so young that like you don't even know what they would have been like to you now this many years on. Like
but also like Io definitely made that choice. It wasn't like she just got
no,
she definitely chose that. And Darrow, because Darrow's literally in the audience like he's like, don't do it, and she's like, nope, I'm gonna sing now. He's like, all right. So she definitely was like, yeah, I'm dying for this cause. Like, this is my choice. But
even before that, when she's like saying bye to him.
Yeah.
He's like, there's something
even
in her
before that, when she shouldn't be killed for going to the garden. We all agree. But she also knew that going to the garden is a bad idea. Like,
because golds are insane.
Golds are insane. Yeah. So I feel like not that he handles everything perfectly, but in general, there feels like there's thought and intentionality with how he's handling things and what he's introducing into the story and how the characters react to it.
Yeah. I mean, not females in this story get treated poorly, but there's also like a couple of strong examples of at least like building blocks of his good female characters, because they definitely do become badasses later in the series. Like just in general, women in this world, like there's entire civil, I mean, like Leon already mentioned, the world's kind of run by a woman. There's not only human, like there's other things that are also run by women. And that's kind of like a point through the entire series. So it definitely does get better. I'd say that. Yeah. Because the writing's less childish as you go on too.
The callback to Io from Mustang when she is singing the song shows how big an impact her death is. Yeah. But it's also like it shows the impact of it. And also like if you're trying to move on from it and not feel guilty for feeling new feelings, that's hard to do when her ghost is in the room with you all the time. That like everywhere she's this martyr that you hear about. You're not allowed to move on. You're not allowed to forget about her because everyone keeps bringing her up. And you're like, dang it.
Well, also like I have to imagine, well, he doesn't, it's odd how little Darrow thinks about his own emotions sometimes when we're in his head all the time. It's like kind of a weird part of his perspective. But also like if he falls in love with Mustang, like, you know, this book, we're just talking in this context and I'm not talking about future books. It's like you are falling in love with the thing that Io hates.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I mean, he's constantly grappling with that, though, right? Because he realizes that they're not all just garbage people.
Yeah, forget love. Just feeling like friendship for any of them is like,
because he realizes through this book, he's like, shit, I'm friends with these guys now. Like, uh-oh.
And at the end of this book, when he realizes Mustang is, who Mustang is, at least as far as we know at this point, and he's like, Mustang is Io's dream. Like that, like she didn't know it, but Mustang represents like the future that Io did dream of. And that's like hard to realize when she does, like on the face of it, she represents everything Io hates. But in reality, if you look past the labels.
Yeah. I mean, especially though, like because I remember when I first read the book, obviously going back and reading it, like none of the twists surprised me, which it's kind of silly that Pierce Brown definitely like hides shit from you when you're supposed to be in your main character's head. Like I know that bothers some people a lot. It doesn't really bother me just because the books are fun and I enjoy them. Like the initial twist of Mars actually being populated, like the first time around, I was like, oh, that's kind of tight, because the entire, just like lying to this entire race of people and keeping them underground, be like, yeah, we're terraforming the planet, like we're gonna live here eventually. And then he finally sees it and he's just like, wait a second. It's like, people live here already. There's entire societies. This is crazy. So
and the way that it strips you of the like noble, like heroic martyr feeling you had when you were like, well, my life is hard, but it's for a noble cause. And to realize that it's been for nothing, that like you suffered already. That was hard to deal with. And you already hated Goals for making you suffer. And then to realize that what little bit of dignity that you took from that has been taken from you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when it's put to him too. Like when he's like, isn't it better to lie to you? Would you have been happier knowing the truth? I don't think so. I think you were happier. If you have to live that life of mining, you're happier not knowing the truth.
Although I will say the twists make more sense, me not getting foreshadowing for them now that I know he's a pantser. Like, I wonder how often the twists show up for him before he even knows it. So
he's just writing. He's just like, oh, I'll just do this right here.
I mean, they also didn't bother me. If I think about it too much, they probably would. But I find that these books are so like immersive in a way that I don't normally get in books, where it's like, I'm not analyzing it at all. I'm just here watching it. It's just a fun time. And it's a very engaging time. Also, if you hear a cat, it's because there is one over here.
I mean, I feel like it definitely sticks out more in books that you dislike. And if you just sat down and really thought about it, you would be like, okay, this is kind of dumb. Like, how would we not understand this if we're supposed to be in his head? But like, there's other books that do a much worse job of just being like, hey, by the way, there's an army here now. Like, that's just happening. You haven't heard of them for 3 books, but they're just here now. Like, that feels a little bit worse than this. So like him having the grav boots or like forgetting that he had them on. It's just like, oh, I'm flying now. It's like, but shouldn't you already know that? Like, why is that a surprise to us reading the book when you would have put those
But at the
on?
same time, though, because I knew to look for that, like he doesn't not tell us, or like he does hint at it, because he's like, when he's wearing the furs on his feet and he's like, it's way too hot to be wearing this, but I need to keep wearing it. And you're like, why do you need to keep wearing it? And like, you did see him punch out Fitchner. So you're like, okay, between him punching him out and him saying, I got to keep wear these pelts on my feet, you're like, because you're wearing scrap boots. Like,
I also think that, like, especially in this first book, the nature of how many time jumps we have, where it's like, okay, something's happened, some thought process has happened off page that I wasn't there for, because there are so many jumps between scenes that it's just like, well, he did think about it, but right now he's hyper focused on a different thing, and that's what we're doing. It kind of worked for me how it was kind of like that kind of fragmented, jumpy, montagey nature this entire book.
I mean, it's at least like several weeks at the Institute, if not months, right? Like they're there for a while.
I think it's almost a year.
I think it's like 6 or 8 months, because I think they have fall, winter, and part of spring. But if we're assuming an Earth year's seasons, which is a bad assumption, but I have nothing else.
But also, like, because like Darrow thinks to himself about how old he is, and it seems like, some of that time was like between him getting pulled out of the grave and getting carved and entering the Institute. But some of it is also the Institute. So I think it's not a whole year, but it's like the better part of a year.
He's definitely, I think, like 18 by the end of this book, right? Like, and we start at 16?
Something like that, yeah. Which also, speaking of the carving, I think I might have either in Instagram or maybe I just told Leon, I was like, I forgot how creepy Mickey was. Like, every single time he's talking, I'm just like, you're a freaking weirdo, bro. It's just uncomfortable listening to him talk.
Oh, I have sirens. I don't know if you can hear that. Sorry.
Yes, we can.
It's not
that
obnoxious
happens all
to
the
us.
time.
They're coming for my bad takes. They so it almost never bothers me that there's some kind of like you didn't know it even though Darrow knew it. Surprise. Because I'm always like excited for it because I'm like, I bet Darrow has a plan and I don't know what it is, but like, what's your plan, bro? I know you have one. So like I'm just like excited to find out what it is. The thing that is kind of awkward to me, which is like I find awkward in general in first person perspectives, but I think it's a little worse in this than it is a lot of the time, how like Darrow has to brag in order to tell you how impressive he is at something because no one else can do it. So he'll be like, but I'm faster than them, so he can't possibly beat me. And I'm smarter than them, so they can't possibly beat me. And it's like, I know that like no one else can tell me that because you're the narrator and you are faster and you are smarter, but it just comes off so like, I'm faster.
When he talks about how quickly he picked up those dances, as someone who's good at dancing, you don't learn a new dance that fast. I can't, but
you
whatever.
don't because you're not
Darrow.
number one on the roster.
I'm not number one. And his hands, his dexterous hands. Oh my God.
Which, like, to be perfectly honest, when he talks about like that these are the hands of like a miner of Lycos, I'm like, but they're not. Like, they were restructured completely. So I'm like, why would you have anything left over of what you could do as a red?
It's all up in here. His hands are up in here.
No, I mean, I'm totally okay with letting it go. And like, I kind of said this in my review. I actually don't care that he's a Gary Stu sometimes. Like, some things are earned, but there's a lot of things about him that it's just like, fine, be the best, whatever. Because like you were saying, Leanna, I kind of just want to see how he solves the problem. And it's just kind of
usually
fun.
Violence. That's his go-to. But yeah,
I mean, it's like Kvothe in space.
Yeah. So it's basically the name of the wind. Okay.
Darrow does not annoy me or stress me out as much as Kvothe.
Well, because Kvothe is worse about just being like, I know this is a bad idea. It's going to get me in trouble. I will definitely have my ass handed to me if I do this, and I'm doing it. And you're like, oh.
Yeah, Kvothe perpetually makes decisions where I'm like, we both know this is bad. Whereas Darrow, like, I mean, sometimes he's forced into bad scenarios, but I honestly do think most of the time he makes the best out of the bad situation. And
he's making like a strategically calculated risk. Kvothe is just like, I feel like pissing you off, and I'm gonna. And you're like, but why?
I mean, Darrow does tell us when he messes up, though, because like when he attacks the jackal, and he's like, wait, shit, no, I miscalculated here. This is bad.
Yeah, I didn't expect him to cut off his hand because, to be fair, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where, like, actually the fact that I don't think he's actually smug. It just kind of feels smug when he has to be the one to tell you that he's the best. And it's just like, but so then he's quite smug when he's like caught the jackal and he's like, and I tell him this and I throw the knife down. And of course he can. Oh.
He was parading.
Oh,
like, what are you going to do? Cut your hand off? He's like,
got him. Got him. Like, you
and he's
don't
like, wait a second. Shit, he's actually cutting his hand off.
But like, I've read that scene 3 times, and every time it's chilling. The switch that happens when Lucius or whatever he's going by turns into the jackal, and he just goes dead-eyed, and is like, and when Darrow is like, he looks too sane right now. Like, that's what makes him look insane, and it's just like, like, he's so creepy.
No, yeah. And I actually forgot. So, like, I knew some of the twists and I knew where we ended up at the end of this book, but I forgot a lot of the middle parts. And I'm like, I know we meet the jackal eventually in this book. I know there's a moment where we don't know if Mustang's on his side, but it's fine. And then I totally forgot it was the scene with the fake drinking and stuff. And I was just like, oh, man.
Yeah, that was a good scene. And yeah, that was another time that Darrow definitely, like, head case was like, oh no, I miscalculated, because he's like, I just learned that they're brother and sister and she has half my army and all of our equipment. He's like, oh god, I'm screwed. And then she's just like, nope, I'm on your side.
I like that didn't get dragged out, though, that he would think that she had betrayed him for longer. But like, it's like 2 seconds later, she's like, oh, did you think that I was gonna? And I like too that he didn't write a female character that would now be like offended and like, how dare you think I would betray you? That like, she's like, yeah, it's reasonable that you would have assumed that I would have betrayed you. I should have told you sooner, and I didn't. And like, we're good. I'm like,
I mean, but in fairness, like, she should have told him. But if I was related to the jackal, I might not tell people. Like, it's
there's just like a tendency sometimes, and I mean, female authors do it too, but they'll write a female that's like irrationally angry about something to create drama, and it's almost always the female that's irrationally angry. And I just like, I mean, I knew she wouldn't because I'd read it before, but the first time I read it, I was like, is Mustang going to be mad at him that he assumed that she had betrayed him and be like, I thought we trusted each other, but apparently not. And like walks like, but instead she's like, no, yeah, I get it.
She also plays into the whole.
Is Cassius.
Yes, Cassius
is our drama queen.
Mustang also plays into the like when Darrow's kind of accepted as the leader. I think it was at one point she's just like, "Oh, right away, Reaper," like just playing it off like, "Yeah, you're in charge here. I guess I'll just be my good little, servant and go run along and carry your message."
Yeah. That is a thing that I wish isn't so drawn out is the Cassius stuff because it stresses me out every time I remember it and read it. I just like the whole
Which
thing.
part? Just when he like takes him out into the middle of nowhere?
All of it. Well, first of all, Darrow got taken out in the middle of nowhere like twice within 4 chapters, and I'm just like, sir, like
it's like Hadrian getting arrested in Sun Eater, which you'll learn. He just gets arrested all the time. I'm like, again? Stop.
Oh, is this where I tell you guys I DNF'd that book? I'm sorry, guys. Couldn't do it. It was more out of apathy than anything, so sorry.
But to this point about Darrow being smarter than everyone and that being unbelievable, it is a bit because it does come off that way. But I do like that there's an effort made to distinguish between people being really smart and just being the right kind of smart. And Darrow is like, they all know more than I do. They are all possibly smarter than me. But it's like kind of like the LSAT is like a very specific kind of thinking. It doesn't mean you're smart. It means you're good at the LSAT. And so like when he talks about this, like extrapolation thinking or whatever, where it's like
a trick question test.
Yeah, and so then he's like, I'm not smarter than anyone, but I'm really, really good at this specific kind of thinking which is what they are looking for. And so the fact that the book is like, he's not literally smarter than everyone all the time. In fact, there's a lot of things he's kind of dumb about, but like he just happens to be specifically naturally gifted at that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And for some reason, that society really cares about backstabby, tricked, questiony sort of things. Like that's a value to them.
Yeah. Aiden, the length of the books do get a little bit longer, but I feel
by
like
the time we're in Iron Gold, they are tomes.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Dark Age is like almost 1,000 pages.
Once you get to multi POV, they're definitely chunky.
But yeah, I think the first 3 are all about the same, right?
They are, but I think
they get longer. They're all longer than Red Rising.
The first one, I feel like, was kind of short because of it was basically just getting to the next part of the story where it's like we have to like do all this stuff, but there's no need for this book specifically to be like 700 pages long because people already think the Institute dragged on too long. Imagine if this book was twice as long.
Yeah.
Like, especially as a single POV, it would have been way too long.
I would not have liked this book if it was 50 pages longer. I liked getting the cuts. It's like watching a football game, but only the highlights. That's what this book was, and I was cool with that. Like,
I think the only part that like could have taken longer and might be slightly improved for taking longer is him transitioning into Goldhood, because that's very fast. And like it's okay that it's a montage. I mean, that's why because it works because it's a montage. But like you could flesh that out more, and that would be a fine thing to do.
But like now that I think about it, flesh it out in what way though? Like him trying to like, learn as he's getting carved, or just like once he's carved, learning how to be a gold. Instead of basically going straight to the Institute.
Both. And I just
for a while he's just getting carved for a long time and like horrible pain and recovering.
But kind of like to like your point earlier just about generally in the book, how like for a book that's from his POV, we don't get his feelings a whole lot. Yeah. And I think like the montage of him becoming a gold, there's a bit of him being like, what does this mean? EO wouldn't recognize me. But like we don't get a lot of what it's doing to him like mentally, this like complete like shift of everything he's ever known. So I think like we get the montage of like what's physically happening to him, how they're training him, how they're improving him, how they're like carving him and giving him the memory stuff he needs and like all that. But there's not a lot of like the mental strain of like going through that. So that could be fleshed out more.
Sure.
Yeah. And like a thing that is definitely something I wish we had a little bit more of, but was out of the scope of this book and gets better in the series is just like he has such fleeting character connections with people. You know, and like in that moment, we do see how he's sort of connected to this pink that's like trapped with him and she's getting carved in a certain way. And it's just like, those are things that you miss out on in the montage-y format that this book kind of relies upon. And so if it were to be expanded, those are the types of moments I would have wanted more of. But also that would require more focus on any sort of character building outside of just like relying on space opera archetypes.
Yeah.
So.
Expected Capture the Flag to be 20 pages and then it was the entire rest of the book. I mean, that's kind of, I think I gave it 5 stars this time because it's kind of that where it's like, I never liked the Institute before. And the second time through, I guess I kind of like when Alex was like, I only read this 2.5 times. I feel like I should say I read it 2.5 times because I read it in its entirety the second time, but it was kind of like a grudging skim because I wanted to reread the whole series and Red Rising was my least favorite. And I was like, well, I need to get through this one so I could get to Golden Sun.
Yeah.
So I was like, institute. So like I read it, but it was just kind of like not really engaging with it. It was just to get through it. And this time through, I was like, I'm gonna pay attention. I'm gonna like try to understand why people like the Institute. And like this time through, like, I mean, obviously, like for it to be like an ideal book, like I should have loved it the first time. But this time, because like I know it's gonna be almost the entire book, and I know how it's gonna be, and I know how violent it's gonna be, and I know how medieval it's gonna be, and like I just know how it's gonna be. And I'm like, oh, that's okay. So accept it and then just engage with it on its own terms. And because I did, then I actually did quite enjoy it this time.
Nice.
I think the first time around when I read it, I think I got halfway through the book and I was like, are they even on Mars? Where are they? This just feels like they're out in like a field somewhere on Earth, just like cosplaying. Like, what is happening? I was basically getting mad at the book at that point the first time around. This time around, though, I was just remembering all the cool shit that happens. Like the first time all the howlers are a thing and they're howling in the background as they're fighting, or when Darrow, like I think it's later on when they start to actually like take all the houses and Darrow's talking to the one Proctor, whichever one is Jupiter or the other one, I forget. But they don't realize that they can't hear anything outside. And and then Darrow's just like, ha ha ha. It should be about time that Severus is taking your keep. And he's like, what? And then you hear like all the howling like miles away and they just overthrow everything. That's pretty sweet.
And I think also it's funny to me because everyone does say the second half feels like medieval fantasy war games to them. But for me,
they're actually like riding horses and they have swords in castles.
But for me, like it reminds me, at least in terms of storytelling structure, about a lot of classic sci-fi, like Foundation and stuff like that, where it's like we have a problem, we need to solve it. It's very truncated in that way of its storytelling, and so yes, it has no like sci-fi devices, but it reminded me of like cultural world building sci-fi because we're also watching people like struggle with societal structures and figure out their version, and that's more of a sci-fi question in my head. I mean, I don't. Really, so like,
it's like, I mean, it's like medieval warfare, except every so often, like a spaceman on his graph boots floats down to be like, "Hey, pissheads, what are you doing?"
He cloaks himself.
Well, he's popping bubble gum. Okay, what?
Because it didn't bother me either time, and I found him. It was engaging to me both times. Both times I read the Institute in one day.
Yeah,
it was like.
It's also not unfamiliar anymore, especially with like sci fantasy books. Like whether it's Dune or Sun Eater or Red Rising, like they will find reasons to have horses and swords and shields. It's going to happen regardless of what kind of fighting you're doing.
This version of sci-fi with horses is definitely better than Rise of Skywalker's horses charging across the top of a battleship, whatever situation. Like
there's that. I mean, that's a choice.
It can always be stupid.
The series also has gigantic horses. Because golds are like 10 feet tall.
I know it's like because it's normal because everyone is like the same size, so it becomes like the new normal. So it's like you only really notice size if there's a disparity, and so it's like every so often when he like says something about their size and like reminds you, like when he'll talk about how far they can run and how in like a space like how long you can go in a minute or something like that, or like specifically talks about like height and length or whatever, and you're just like Jesus. You're enormous.
Yeah, because then there's like casually walking around being like 9 feet tall, and you're like, wait, that's way too large. Like they're literal giants. And then reds are like 5 feet tall.
But then at the same time, then when he's like holding Mustang and like, oh, she's so thin and fragile and weak from fever, and like, but she's also like 9 feet tall, like it's enormous.
Like yeah.
Also, like, relative. How much of Darrow is left in that carving when you are doubled in size? Like. Like this is another thing where it's like I can't
just
think
the
about
hands
this book seriously.
Of the minor.
I just can't do it.
The hands in his brain.
But it's interesting. It's just they're so big. And have either of you? I know, Leanna, you have the Red Rising card game, but I don't know if you've played it.
Well, it's a board game. It's not just a card game.
Well, there's
okay. It's rummy with a board, but it's mostly a card game.
There's like cool little jeweled like little.
We also have the Kickstarter cards.
Okay, but I was always annoyed that they only have Darrow as a red. They don't have Darrow as a gold. And I don't get to see the change.
It's a spoiler. Can't spoil it.
It's not a spoiler.
It's a spoiler.
It's the prologue of
It's the setup for the entire series. Yes, I know.
Also, this prologue is pretty much 10 out of 10. It tells you exactly what this book is. Like, it's melodramatic as hell. Like, that's great.
So how did you not like Sun Eater? Hadrian is super melodramatic.
I actually thought about this because I was like... It's not because he's melodramatic. It's because Darrow's melodramatic from a place of poor angst, repression, and like oppression and stuff. Like he comes from being beaten down.
Society asshole version.
it's just like a rich boy with daddy mommy issues, and I'm like,
I always said that Sun Eater is if Darrow had been born a gold.
Yeah.
And I think that's just not as interesting to me, and I don't vibe with it as much. That's
like,
all.
Hadrian's father is Nero Augustus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, his father. Yeah, no, I mean, and also I know he's meant to be pretentious, but I truly was just like, sir.
That's how people feel about Darrow.
True, and like I said, for Darrow, it's like, yeah, but you're like the person who doesn't realize you're being pretentious because you came from the ground up and you don't know because you weren't raised in that society. I don't know. It's just different.
Maybe that is why that's how it is for you. But I think the reason why Darrow works for people, and perhaps not Hadrian, is that Hadrian doesn't have a Severo.
That might be part of it too.
Balance that out.
That's also.
He kind of got one at one point. Definitely not to the. I mean, no, Switch is not Severo, but
I was like 150 pages in, and I still didn't know who my other cast of characters was going to be outside of Hadrian, and I was like, we just keep hopping around, and you're dumb.
Because the thing about Sun Eater is like the entire first book is like a little bit of the Red Company, but this is one of my biggest problems with the side characters in that series. Is by the time you're like 4 or 5 books in, when you start to lose people. There were so many of them that I just didn't care about because they're not the focus of the story. Because it's not a multi-POV space opera. It's not like The Expanse where you have this big cast of characters that you like. Like they're all kind of there, but they're not like fleshed out characters often.
Yeah.
So.
But I think the difference also is that, like, at least in these books, like Empire of Silence is thematically trying to do something, and I respect it for that. These books are also thematically doing things, but they're also meant to just be a pulpy time. Like that's what these 3 books are attempting to do.
Yeah. This is a big dumb action movie.
That's a different assignment.
Yeah,
so.
It's very true.
But Alex, next time we do a Sun Eater talk, you better not get mad at me if I bring up Red Rising, because the amount that we're talking about,
I'm pretty sure right now, 100% of our Sun Eater talks have at some point mentioned Red Rising.
Yes, but you get mad at me for it. I'm saying you're not allowed to get mad at me for it.
I mean, I think this is an interesting comparison of characters.
Sun Eater will come up in all of these chats. Does that balance this? Are we cool? We can talk about Sun Eater every single time. Yeah.
You'll have to update me because I don't care if you spoil me, but like I don't know anything past the first.
We'll just do that not in the live chat, because if we're like talking about Golden Sun and I drop a Kingdoms of Death spoiler or something, people are gonna be like, "What the?"
Honestly, I feel like the Sun Eater series is so like wild that if you have a no context spoiler, you will be too confused to know that you've been spoiled.
I love those types of spoilers. Like, yeah.
No, you won't get to it obviously, but like by book 3, even in book 2, there's certain things that you're just like, what the hell? It's like weird out there sci-fi gobbledygook stuff happening.
But so with this book, there's so many characters that aren't in this book that like, it's not that I didn't know they're not, but it's just so wild to me that they're just like considered like staple Red Rising characters that are like, they would be on all the merch, everyone's top characters. These are like the main characters, and they're not even in Red Rising.
There's also
I was thinking that too, because I was thinking of before this chat we were talking about a character and trying to figure out what house she was in her Institute days. And I'm like,
it's from the board game, by the way.
What'd you say?
It's because she's introduced in the next book, and the House Institute thing is because of the board game. That was the reference.
Okay, that's what I
apparently that's a thing. I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I like the card game, which is an unpopular opinion in the board game sphere that no one on BookTube cares about, but people didn't really like that board game. I think it's a fun card game.
What do you think Severo is the not so cozy Samwise Gamgee?
I mean, I don't know.
He's loyal, like Sam.
I understand the comparison, and he's definitely the not so cozy version of most things. Because Severo's a psychopath. Not cozy.
But there's also something weirdly cozy about Severo.
I was about to say he's really good at breaking the tension.
Yeah.
And like also when people love Severo, which they do, he's always everyone's favorite. Mm-hmm. But it's a character that you can't overuse because like you need to use him sparingly, and I like that Pierce Brown seems to know how to gauge how much Severo to use.
Yeah.
No, that's true, because I don't hate me. I do not dislike Severo, but he is not my favorite. But I think
you're wrong. He's your favorite.
Okay, well, we'll find out by the end of this where I've ended up on this reread. But he isn't overused for me because he would be a personality type that I could be convinced to not like his perspective. It's kind of like Mistborn Era 2. A lot of people don't like Wayne because he's overused in their head or his point humor. Exactly. And I think that type of balance could be done poorly with Sevro's character, but for me it hasn't happened, and it's fine. Because he's important. Like, he's an important character. It's just, he's not my favorite.
I'd say he's definitely in it more as the series goes on, and there's certain books where he's like pretty heavily there, but it's definitely like
but like using him as that like that chaotic
he's a wild card.
Yeah, and so like having
neutral, if I'm honest.
But having that wild card element all the time would not make it fun anymore. It's because you just like have him pop in unexpectedly doing something wild that it works. If you did it too much, because like people love it, so I should do more of it, that would ruin it.
Like Wayne, who's not funny, and he's in the books entirely too much.
Have you finished that series yet? Because you should probably.
I didn't read the latest one. Which
you really shouldn't.
Literally sitting right here. Oh,
I've
heard.
Think you should.
I asked people. I was like, "Is Wayne in it any less?" And they're like, "No, he's
That's
not."
What I'm saying. You really should not, unless you really have like 10 hours you don't care about spending any other way.
I mean, I'll read it at some point, but I hate Wayne.
You haven't finished Realm of the Elderlings or First Law, so
that's true. That's part of what I'm trying to finish this year.
I get to continue Realm of the Elderlings soon because I am free of Wheel of Time, which, whoo, what a time. Anyways, back to Red Rising, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, no Sanderson talk on my channel. What are you doing?
Hey, but I was disliking a book, so that's on.
I was using a negative trait of a Sanderson character to bring up exactly. Sevro.
We know where we're at, Leanna.
Okay. You're right. I'll allow it. But yeah, so like we've been pretty positive during this chat. We've been like Red Rising apologists, but it's definitely not without faults. So do we want to criticize it a bit?
I mean,
go for it.
Yeah, you start.
Well, like I say that, but I was about to like make excuses for it again, honestly, because it's like, well, because like a lot of the problems that it has, like I also forgive them because he was like 23 and Rage wrote this for himself because he was not being successful as an author. And so he just wrote this for himself, kind of like in frustration. And it reads like a 23-year-old man who was frustrated wrote this for himself, you know? So it's like when people are like,
sometimes it read like a 15-year-old.
But it's like, oh, Darrow's like wish fulfillment-y and it doesn't really make sense. And it's like all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I don't disagree. But also when I know how the origin of how this came about, I'm like, that's why it reads like that.
No, and I mean, oh gosh, I want to like say something, but then it's like taking away the negativity. But it's like, I also think sometimes it's fine to read like a pseudo fan fiction book and it's really engaging and a fun time. And like, this is better than that. Like, it's a tier above just like finding good Hunger Games adjacent fan fiction with a space opera sleeve, you know, like.
Yeah, but I mean, it also just comes down to personal enjoyment. Like, we understand that there's issues with these books, and clearly, like, I disliked it a lot more the first time around. I like it now because I just love the series. So, like, the problems I initially had definitely don't bother me anymore because it's just so much fun. And I think the first time that I read through it, I wasn't really on board until the end of this book. And then when I read Golden Sun, I was like, okay, now I kind of appreciate what he did in Red Rising because this book was so good. And then Morning Star was also fantastic. That was just like, all right, I'm good. Like, I love it.
Yeah, I think if it had stayed at the level that it is at Red Rising, then I wouldn't really like, I don't know if I would have continued. I certainly wouldn't respect it. But because Red Rising is like the young, the debut, the first, the meh, like that's the starting point. And because it was clear that Pierce Brown was like, oh, this isn't for me anymore. This is like, okay, put your like thinking cap on, like write a proper series now. And the fact that even after that, then with the new books, he didn't just like rest on his laurels and was like, Red Rising's popular, just slap the Red Rising name on something. Like, it's clear that it's important to him to grow as an author and to like stretch beyond his comfort zone and to do more and do better. And like, I just so much appreciate an author that's not like, well, I don't know if you know this, but I'm kind of amazing already at what I do. And I don't need an editor and I don't need to be told anything. That they're like, no, I know I can do better. I know I can fix this. I know this I would do differently the second time. And so then keep trying to get better.
Yeah. I think my biggest complaint is probably still like the thing I would do to if I had to say, yes, this is an expanded book is like, I truly am like the reason why I would read instead of watch something is like reading. You get to have closer character interaction moments than you do watching on screen, depending on, I guess, the acting. And like, I could easily watch this or read this and it would probably be a very similar experience to me because of its pacing and things like that. So as a book, like I don't have an adaptation to watch. So this is fine and it's fun and easy to read, but I kind of wish it had more of the depth that I go to for reading as a reader myself. Like obviously reading's very personal and different, but that's my thing. Is it's just like I have to do a lot of my own mental gymnastics to give personality to characters in this first book because they don't currently come with their own. They come with their own quirks, but they don't. You know, there's not a lot on page.
There are so many names in this first one that like now when I read it, I don't have trouble with that because I know who they all are from the later books. The first time through, I was like, not only are there a lot of characters, but they all have like 10 names because there's like the real name and the nickname and the family name. And you're just like, and then a lot of them start with the same like Titus and Tactus. And like, I definitely got Titus and Tactus confused. Even now I get them confused. Sometimes like, wait, oh no, that was Titus.
No, yeah. Is there even like a character page in this book? I don't even think there is.
I don't.
I think there is in the new books, but I don't think there is in these.
I'm pretty sure they didn't add that until book 2 even.
Because a lot of people not know the Institute would be half the book, though. There's a whole map of it.
But it would be like, I think it would be extremely spoilery to have a character list because it's like you're not supposed to know Mustang is Virginia and like things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably ways around that, but
usually when things are spoilers for a book, but you still want to reference it, it's usually at the back. That's what authors do. At least I've read a lot of Wheel of Time now, and that's what they do there. So,
well, Wheel of Time has 4,000 named characters, so
Wheel of Time is proof that even if you have unlimited page time, there's such thing as too many characters. It's just true.
And when you run out of page count for characters, just write more of them.
And if you're in the last book of the series, add new characters.
Create new ones. Who cares? Why not? Throw some more characters.
Sorry, I'm still bitter.
I still want to see this get an adaptation, though. I don't know if that's ever going to happen, but
I mean, ever, yes, but like anytime soon.
Well, I mean, who knows?
What is nice about it is like, obviously, we would want to see the whole saga as fans, but the first book is like a complete arc in its own right, and so even if it failed, you could like kind of at least see the world visually. And like it would sell. Like this is the type of stuff that sells. People love these tropes.
Yeah, for sure.
And since it is more medieval, the special effects don't have to be as intense. But I worry about how bad everyone's going to look because the coloring system, like how it's their eyes and their hair and their skin, like it's gonna look weird.
I feel like you'd have to do it fairly subtly.
Yeah. And then I don't know how you handle race in that. It's weird.
How you what?
How you would handle race, because like even in their color, it's supposed to be in their skin pigmentation, but obviously, like Leanna said, you can't quite do that.
There's a lot of fan art though of like characters of different races being the different colors.
I mean, for a casting, you would just cast whoever and just give them blonde hair and gold eyes. I mean, House of the Dragon made an entire race of Valerians black that weren't black. So I mean.
I just meant more like I just worry about things looking like I get really weirded out when irises aren't normal colors.
Yeah.
Like I get really
I think it's it's not really skin tone. It's mostly just eyes and hair.
Okay. I thought when I was reading it this time, but I'm a bad person at picking.
I think it's just because they stress how tan the golds are, and so he frequently uses words about them looking kind of golden. But like when Darrow was a red, he was like pale AF. He was like super white.
Apparently, you guys can correct me. The audiobooks make them have an Irish accent. I haven't listened to it.
Well, because Tim
the Reds are inspired. The Reds are supposed to be like Irish.
Okay.
But that's why they sing. That's also just the narrator, like his voice, just.
But that not Darrow, Pierce Brown picked that narrator because he had the Irish accent.
So there you go.
Yeah.
All intentional.
I also wonder if it would be fun as animated, because then you could do
like in the style of Arcane.
That would be cool, in my opinion. I don't know. I'm actually very pro doing animation for a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, but everyone is very anti that. But
pretty much anytime I read Sanderson, I'm like, this should be animated, not live
I would have so much fun. Like, I love animated things. I'm rewatching DC animated, which is infinitely better than any live action DC they've ever put out.
That's a very low bar, though.
I have so much fun.
I mean, I have the box set of the Batman animated series.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we're on the first season still. It's been like we've been doing Saturday morning cartoons. We're having fun.
So did you guys have some favorite characters that were not Darrow, since we haven't really talked about? I mean, everybody loves Severo for the most part, but like, I know you had mentioned Pax at one point. We know.
I just thought he was fun.
Oh, tell him on us.
Pax is hilarious, one, because of something I won't say because it's later on, but also he's just funny because he's a Pokemon, and even to his dying breath, he just keeps saying his name. But like, who else did you like as far as other characters, whether it's like Mustang, or did you like Cassius at all, or anybody else?
Cassius is hard to talk about because we all know so much about Cassius. So Cassius in this book is insufferable.
But even in this book, I like that even though, and again, it's not handled perfectly. He improves with this in later books, but I think even in this book, it's easy to make a caricature of Cassius, and he doesn't feel like a caricature. Like there is like, it's really complicated how you feel about him because you get why Darrow befriended him. But even from the beginning, even when they're friends, there's this like snobbery and classism about Cassius that like is always unforgivable. His attitude isn't like great, but at the same time, you can't help but feel like there is a kind of nobility to him that you get why Darrow would like have his, like it would break his heart to lose the friendship of Cassius.
Yeah. And like I think I was probably more just like Darrow was, realizing at the beginning, like he was put in an impossible situation on purpose. It's like, oh, we all killed people that these other people probably cared about, and now there's this like tension. And like, even if Darrow had come clean right away, being like, Cassius, I'm sorry, I had to kill your brother. Like, Cassius wouldn't have forgiven him right then. Like, there's no winning.
Well, the whole time, it's just like, from the very beginning, you know how hypocritical Cassius is being about the whole thing. Because like, Cassius killed somebody in the passage, but he's like, someone killed my brother? That's unacceptable. And it's like, because it's a one rule for the others and a different rule for me. And that's the whole thing about the golds in general. And he's just like, there's like golds to everyone else is like one rule for us and one a different rule for you guys. But then the top echelon of golds are like that to other golds.
Well, I do think he did make it. Well, I don't think Cassius would have changed his mind if things were different, because I think Cassius is a hypocrite. But Cassius does make a point of saying, it's not that you killed my brother, it's when I saw the hollow how you killed my brother, which I still think is harsh and unfair because they weren't giving any weapons or anything. Yeah. But, like, and I don't think if like...
But it's also like, Cassius, is there a way that I could have killed your brother that you'd have been like, oh, okay, well, I've seen the hollow, and actually the way you killed him is fine. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
Just hit him one time and he died. Like, that's all right.
He slipped and like actually knocked himself out. And you're like, well, you didn't even actually kill him. He killed himself.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it is pretty uncomfy that Darrow and Tactus are like, but at the same time, while I do feel that way, I also feel like Darrow hates all the golds. He's there to use every single one of them. Yeah. So like it behooves him to take Tactus under his wing for purely strategic reasons. And so then like, and the whole time Darrow was like, what have I become? What am I becoming? What have I become okay with? Like the entire time is like, that's what's going through his head is like, I've killed, and he's like, these people are monsters, but I killed someone in the passage. We've all killed someone in the passage. And he's just like, where is my line now? What is my line? They're golds. Should I care? And then like the fact that Titus is like, kill them all. I don't care because they're all golds. And Darrow's like, well, I think that's wrong, but actually I'm here to do that. Right. So like, should I feel that it's wrong? And he's just like constantly like, what is morality to me right now? I don't even know.
Yeah.
Well, there's the morality issue, and it's also just he immediately realizes that the golds are full of shit because it's not a perfect society, and even within their perfect society, they're all terrible to each other, and they're still treating each other like there's tiers, like you said. So it's like there's no real rules other than you have to be the prettiest, strongest gold that's the best at killing. Because even Fitchner mentions that. Because he straight up just like, look at me, like I'm ugly. This is as far as I go here. Like I can't step beyond this position as a proctor. And Darrow's just like, yeah, I'm gonna ruin everything.
Can we talk about Fitchner? I love Fitchner.
Yeah, of course we can.
Yeah,
it's your channel. Talk about whatever you want.
Say your channel. He's in the book, and we're here to talk about it.
I'm gonna mute everybody. Yeah, I just like he's also a character like I could see people being annoyed with him. But I feel like he's written well, and I feel like it's there for you to see it if you piece it together that he is Severo's father without like it's not. I mean, it's a secret, but like it's not like it's made in a way like you could never possibly guess that. Like even Darrow, he's like, how did I not guess that? He's like, it's actually really obvious.
Yeah. I just loved the obvious but like still awesome reveal of Severo killing their number one candidate for the house. That's always so fun.
Pretty much everything. I love too when like Severo is like when he tells them, oh, I buried the standard and I'm gonna go get their standard. He's like, what do you think I've been doing? Wanking in the bushes? And they're like, yes. That's exactly what we thought you were doing.
I guess I didn't have strong opinions about Fitchner. I mean, I guess I didn't get frustrated with him, which I guess maybe some people do because maybe he could have done more or something. But I guess I was just more like, I don't know. He's here. He's just making comments. He goes away. It just felt like a weird video game avatar. Like, I don't know. He felt like he was there for the occasional help and info dump, and I was fine with it.
Giver.
So
Darrow also kind of overstepped boundaries too, though, being like, "You haven't done anything for me." She's like, "Shut up, idiot."
But also, like, I just love too that the realization that the game is rigged the entire time, like
horribly rigged.
Yeah, I just
like how long it takes them to realize it, even though it's so obvious from like step one. Like Mars's house is so much worse set up than everyone else's, right? And
but that's not even how it's, because it's like always set up like that, because you get the resources of your like, you know, like house god or whatever. But like the way that even beyond that when they're like, oh no, it's like actually rigged though. It's not just like, oh, there's an imbalance of what resources each house has. It's like after that, even like you're getting extra help and like I'm doing fine. It's being taken away from me. It's not even that they're not giving it to me. They're taking away what I have like won.
They're literally sabotaging them and like poisoning their food. Like it's not fair.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I love that there's another red there, and like I love on that note as well. The fact that at the very end, when Severo was like, it was garbled, whatever you said to Apollo at the end, so I edited it out. And that's all he says. And Darrow's like, what does he know? Why does he know it? Why did he hear it? What does this mean?
Severo pays way too much attention. I do love how undervalued and underappreciated his observing skills are. Like you were saying, you know, people just assume he is what he displays.
That's the point.
That is part of who he is. He is that person.
Well, his superpower is being underestimated.
Man,
it's not just a facade. Like he is that creepy little weirdo, but he's also like using that to dupe people.
It's so fascinating how I totally get why you don't like Wayne. It's totally fine. I'm not telling you to suddenly like Wayne.
It's not funny because Brandon Sanderson cannot write humor to save his life.
That's fine. Again, I'm not here to defend Wayne, but it's so funny how similar they are, though.
I mean, it's fair. I see what you're saying because there's a lot more to Wayne than just being a dumb idiot that talks about hats all the time.
But he is also just at his core that dumb idiot. Like that's not a facade. I don't know. It's just really funny because it's again kind of like the Hadrian Darrow thing, but sometimes there are things that just make even the same-ish thing not work.
Yeah, for sure.
That's all. That's all. Like I said, I'm not trying to make you like Wayne. That's a lost cause.
It's impossible, so that's fine.
So yeah. I really like Mustang. I don't know. But I'm a sucker for just like a smart person. And she's the only smart one we get, really, in terms of like traditional smarts.
Yeah. No, she's definitely smart, level-headed. There's some other characters in this that are just like there to be followers. So they're just kind of tagging along for the ride. So somebody said thoughts on the Jackal.
It's hard to talk about the Jackal on reread.
Why?
I know more than I think I know.
Well, then
I think the Jackal's terrifying.
I was just like what I said earlier was that like no matter how many times I read the scene where he's like unmasked, it's always chilling. It's so well written.
I mean, without any other like beyond this book, you don't get a lot of him. Like you hear a lot about him being a crazy person, and like there's a few scenes of hey, like he's the crazy bad guy in this world, and then obviously you learn more about like how he's being cheated for. And then you get that moment at the end where he's just like fully insane. And
I think Pierce Brown does a really good job of like building up the tension and building up the like reveal of, because like just throwing it the first time you hear about the Jackal, you're like, huh? And then you hear about it again. And then you realize how rigged the game is. And then you find out who the Jackal is and why the game is rigged for him. And then you finally meet him. And even this time when I was like, well, I know that this guy who's like seems to be a normal guy is actually going to be the Jackal, as opposed to the first time when you don't know that.
Yeah.
Either way, though, even like it's almost creepier when you do know it because you're like waiting for him to show it. Like, I know you're not this normal guy. Stop pretending. Stop being nice. You're the Jackal. And that like Darrow. So and then like that the tension of that scene when Mustang like walks in and she's like, "Who's this?" And he's like, "Oh, just go outside." She's like, "Okay." He's like, "We're gonna talk," and she's like, "Okay." And then like. When like, because like Darrow had figured out that was the Jackal, but he hadn't pieced together why Mustang recognized him, and that whole like, and then obviously the moment when Jackal turns, and even then when like you think it's going to be this really satisfying moment to be like, this game is rigged in your favor, you're not even the best, like how can you claim to be the best? And he's like, well, you're talking about like, you know, like, and he's like, you're cutting off your hand and stuff. He's like, this is why we're different. what's a hand? I don't need a hand. I'm my brain. So like, oh, this is rigged against me. Like, yeah, idiot. Like, because I'm intelligent, I have resources, and I'm going to use those resources. Cause duh. And the way he's so like calmly, collectively,
I'll get
like,
another hand, moron. How do you think I get this one?
And the fact that like it's not like embarrassing for him that he's had the game rigged in his favor, because he's like, that would be so stupid to like not win the game with all the resources at your disposal. Like, you plebe. Like, he's so well written.
I also really liked the because Darrow. I know Darrow loves his hands. Darrow has told me many, many times how much he loves his hands.
The hands of a red. The hands of a helldiver.
Was allowed to be X-rated, I don't want to know what his hands would be doing. Like, he really loves his hands. And like the fact that he couldn't understand someone chopping up their hand, though, I think makes a lot of sense. Like, I feel like a lot of people who like, play instruments and stuff, like, when you define yourself by things you can do well, it's like, it's so crazy.
And it's also like a really great moment of like character work, because like people project onto others what they would do, what they would think, what they would suspect. So Darrow is like, if I was like plopped in that chair, I would never cut my own hand off. Therefore, they wouldn't either. And the fact that like you have to be able to not do that, to like think how they would think, even if that's the opposite of you.
I mean, just beyond that, it's like putting yourself in the head of a psychopath. Like you literally can't, because then that would probably mean that you're also a bit of a psychopath. To be able to be on that level, be like, okay, I get why he's cutting his hand off.
But it's this moment where like you realize you've underestimated him in a way that's like, but not just because. So like the game was rigged in his favor. So he's been lulled into this like this princeling who has the game rigged in his favor. He has daddy's money and daddy's connections. He actually is bad at this game. He's having it all handed to him. He thinks he's smart. I'm going to catch him. And then you realize that like, yes, the game is rigged in his favor. That doesn't mean that he's not smart. Like, it just means he also had the game rigged in his favor. You're like, oh, I made a mistake. I've made a huge mistake.
I do think this comment about gold culture is interesting, and also probably why I can't think about this series too much, because at least in the first 3 books, although it's technically about changing society, I actually do not understand how the society functions for more than like 50 years at a time. Like, I actually have no clue.
I mean, it's fair, but also I think the series probably more so beyond the first 3, but like it definitely shows you that, yeah, it is always in flux, and everyone is after power, and everyone is pretty much willing to crush anyone else, even if they're golds, to get there. So, I mean, it can still function. You just, as you peel back the onion, you see how truly effed up most of it actually is, and it's not like nothing about it is really very good. But they're
so noble. It's the top and the cream of society, as it.
But the golds are so good at keeping everyone else down that they stay in power. So it's
and
like,
at believing their own lie.
Yeah, that's like how they stay there, because everyone else is just kept all the way down here.
Yeah. I also think it plays off a pretty common sci-fi thought experiment of like, if your empire becomes too stagnant, too calm, then it will devolve. Like, that's the whole premise of Foundation, that trilogy, right? It's like, well, they were just too stagnant for too long, and then it devolved into barbarism. And so here it's like, even part of their mentality is like, we have to force evolution on ourselves, right? It's like, so it's kind of, I think it also maybe potentially keeps them from doing that. But I don't know. If I think about this society too much, I will have less fun.
But it's also, a lot of him being like inspired by like Sparta and things like that. And like Spartans basically were doing that on a much like lower, smaller scale. But the whole like, we have to make ourselves tough by sacrificing the weak, the purposely doing that.
I like Matt's comment about waiting for the reveal that they're not the top. Yeah, where's the platinum?
I mean, in some ways, Obsidians are. They're just kept,
they're kept in check.
But they're physically bigger than the golds.
I'm excited to relearn about the Obsidians. I've forgotten a lot about them, but I remember them being cool.
Well, I totally forgot that Pax talks about the Obsidians and Helga, and he's like constantly talking about Helga. Like, he's literally like, Pax is like Tormund Giant's name.
He's the big lady. He's the big woman here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Obsidians are even larger. They literally have more appendages. Like, I don't remember how many toes and fingers they have, but it's more than 10. Yeah. But they're basically just kept in like warrior status and sort of like physical labor because of how strong and gigantic they are.
Big and dumb.
Yeah.
But I mean, once we do actually get through the Institute, because obviously that's, the majority of the book. The ending of it, though, did you like it? Did it make you excited for book 2, or were you kind of like? Because I remember reading the end of it, and I was just like, okay, this is where I'm kind of on board with the series because of Darrow kind of accepting being into that family, and he's like, all right, like this is gonna expand way beyond this silly school institute thing that we did.
I mean, the first time that I read it, like the reason I gave it 4 stars, even though I really didn't like the Institute, and that is most of the book, was because I really, really always enjoy the beginning, both when he's a red and when he's getting carved and all the like Pygmalion training. Like all of that. I love it every time. The Institute, I liked it better now, but I didn't originally. And then the way that it ends. So the first time I gave it 4 stars, because I was like, if you had asked me to rate it in the middle of the Institute the first time, I'd be like 3, maybe. And then I got to the end and I was like, oh, I'm kind of hyped. And I remember the beginning was good, so we'll give it 4. We'll give it 4.
For me, I remember on a first read that I still took a couple weeks before I picked up Golden Sun, but this was back when I read series relatively back to back, so I still read it within a month of
I read it like
Red
the
Rising
next day or something.
It was back in the day when like I read one series at a time.
Back when I read 25 books a year instead of 140. What'd you say?
That's where it's at. I don't like who I am now. So even though we said it was a humble brag, I don't enjoy it. I want to go back.
My goal every year is to read less. I'm gonna keep failing.
Every year.
You don't actually want to. Your TBRs don't even fit on your screen anymore.
No, it's not fun.
But I was curious enough to read Golden Sun, although kind of like Matt, I had no idea where it was going to go. I was like a little like, oh, you're going to join the Jackals and Mustangs family. Interesting. Because I am someone who likes romance, I'm like, I guess that means maybe they'll get together. Like I was curious about those silly things. But when I finished Golden Sun, I instantly had to go buy Morning Star. I couldn't wait for the library copy because I'm like, I need to understand what's about to happen because the end of Golden Sun is wild.
Have you read all the way through Dark Age?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do like at the end when like Darrow was like, you don't understand. I've changed the paradigm. I'm something you've never seen before. It's never. And Nero's like, you child. Like everyone who wins.
Like, you just graduated high school, dipshit. Like that didn't mean anything.
I'm the captain of this football team. You've never seen my likes before. And Nero's like, settle down, child.
It's also like, I am the father of the Jackal. Like, whoa, boy.
The guy who we rigged this entire thing for, like, are you understanding what happened here?
Yeah, and also like, further aligning himself on opposite Team Cassius, which was already a fraught blood war situation. So.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, like, you're not going to make friends with Cassius, so you may as well align yourselves with their most powerful enemy.
Yeah.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
And I mean, I was happy that, like, Darrow remembered the assignment. It's like, yes, this will put you as high up as you possibly can go, which was the goal of your whole infiltration of society. Like, he remembered the assignment and didn't get, like, so over his head that he, like, I don't know, his hubris didn't get away from him, which I appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember the first time I read it through, I think the main reason that I was excited more for Golden Sun, one, the way that this book ended, but the people I was talking to at that time were like, just get through Red Rising. I promise it gets much better. And that's why I was struggling so hard because I didn't like it at first. And then Golden Sun like immediately gets more into like the space opera aspect of everything. And even politics. there is kind of like a school feeling to it again for parts of it, but yeah, you get a lot more of the politics, you get space battles, it feels more expansive.
It also feels less young because like everyone in this is in the Institute, so they're all like kids in the Institute, whereas like once you're not in the Institute, it's like the adults of the real world are who you're interacting with. It's not just the kids.
I'm just like remembering how when I first read Red Rising, it was like at a pool, like on vacation, and I was just like having a great time, and there was a lot of murder.
There is a lot of murder for sure. Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, that the cannibalism was interesting. Like,
I love too when like Darrow calls the Jackal a Jackal, and it's like one of the only times the Jackal is irritated. He's like, I don't want to be called the Jackal. Like he didn't take that nickname, and he's like,
I like yours better.
Also, like how it was so Mask of Zorro, the way they kept carving the sling blade into like all the surfaces and did a fiery sling blade like on the
Reaper symbol everywhere. Yeah.
It was so Zorro.
It's so fun and dramatic. So great.
Yeah. But it is also like, you know, psychological warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like the way he sneaks in, not to steal anything, not to do anything, just to carve the sling blade everywhere. So they're like, I've been here. I can go wherever I want.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh shoot. And like, it's not totally earned. It's a little bit much, but it does, because it does enough of that. It does feel kind of earned when people start being like, it's the Reaper. The Reaper has come, and kind of freaking out about it. And like the howling, and like because like no one told them to howl, but they got howled at when they were on the receiving end. So now that they're on your team, they're like, howling is what we do. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
I guess howling is what we do.
Yeah, it definitely happens a little bit quick, but it's so fun.
Well, and like, it definitely is also like, I suspended my, you know, disbelief when it's like, when they came up with the brilliant idea of like, well, if we let them join us and don't make them slaves, they will be better. It's like, well, yes, but I can also kind of believe it just because Golds couldn't fathom that, probably. Like, I get that, but it's also just like, you're also supposed to be very smart. So even if you don't see the value, like, this shouldn't be like such a huge leap, like, you know.
It's like that barbarian brain still takes over. They're just like, I'm a genius, but Ooga Booga must hit with hammer. Like,
you know what yeah, it's just like, it's fine though, and I do like it because like there's a part of me that's like, yes, strive for anything better. Like anything.
Live for more.
So
I mean, like, yeah, like that whipping scene with Tactus, like, because Tactus is like a creep, and the fact that this is the only thing that gets through to him, it does a little bit like the fact that, okay, my favorite part about that entire exchange is actually not that like it changes Tactus. It's that like, well, I hope you are proud of yourself because Pax is traumatized and he's in the corner crying about having to whip you. Like that part of it, that like the big man is like, you made me whip Jero. Like, so sad. It's okay, big guy. Sun's getting real low.
Well, that's like another thing. It's like, this is how the respect thing works. You have to all share pain. Fine. It's truly like so wild how high they are in their society. But like you were saying, like it has to be these really like extreme forms of like tribalism almost.
There is that kind of thing where like when for the passage, when Darrow was ripped out of his bed and like beaten, and he was like, oh, I'm getting beaten now. Okay, just take it. Because he's been beaten before. And then he's like, even though these Golds have been like training for this, whatever, like how many of them actually have ever taken a beating? So like the fact that when they show up here, that like it is that like ivory tower kids like in college for the first time going wild, but like the, you know, Lord of the Flies version of that, where like they've had rules their whole lives and they've been pretty strictly monitored, and now they're like
oh, that's so true though.
I mean, that's kind of how kids act. And I mean, teenagers are immature idiots. Like, if they feel like they have no structure and no one's in charge of them, like, they're going to do wild shit. Like, that's just going to happen.
But yeah, to this, the fact that like Darrow didn't win, he just took it to Olympus, you know, that he was like, screw your game. Like, I'm coming for you. Cause you like, you're not playing by the rules. So I'm not playing by your rules. But it reminded me a little bit of like, the Kobayashi Maru in Star Trek when he's like, it's unwinnable, so I'm gonna rig your thing and reboot it so that it's winnable, because like you've set it up because in a way that it's unwinnable. So
they're just like going through Olympus, and the teachers are just like waking from their slumber, like, huh, you can't be in here. What?
I love the detail.
No one ever comes up here.
Like someone's like having grapes, right? Like I don't really know.
Like,
he has cheesecake on her nightstand.
Yeah,
is specified.
She's like in like a night robe. She's just like, how could you be up here? This is, students can't come in here. And he's just like, shut up.
I'm changing the paradigm.
And like it's just like such fun melodrama. It's like really bad butt rock, but it's the butt rock you kind of like. It's fun. Oh, it's so
this
good.
Is why I'm like, I haven't said it this whole time. I'm proud of myself. But if you haven't done this, then this is your sign to do it. When you read Red Rising, listen to the soundtrack of Pacific Rim, the original.
Oh, that would be so good.
I do it all, like literally to the point I have like listened to the soundtrack of that movie while reading Red Rising so much in my life that last time I watched Pacific Rim, I was like, oh, that's Red Rising music.
That's the music to the book I read.
Yeah.
I usually listen to Pacific Rim where I need to pump myself up when I have to do something I hate, like write my dissertation.
I mean, especially for like the Iron Rain. like the Pacific Rim soundtrack is just like that's the sound of the Iron Rain.
Oh, that's so good. That's a good shout. Anyways, that's great. I approve. I endorse that. I've not even done it, but that's great.
And also all the titles of the tracks for Pacific Rim also fit Red Rising because it's like the Resistance and like we're canceling the apocalypse and like Gypsy Danger and like all the names are like this all just sounds like it's from Red Rising anyway. There's one that's like 3,000 tons of awesome or something. It's like all the tracks. I was like, this is Red Rising.
That sounds like a Jay Kristoff quote.
Could be.
What? You know it's true. That's true.
I haven't read Jay Kristoff, so I'll just take your word for it.
Ever at all?
No, I've avoided it.
I just like super like cringy, edgy quotes like that. I could just totally see being like, this book is 3,000 pounds of awesome.
Truth be told.
No, like my experience with Jay Kristoff before BookTube was going to the bookstore, reading the blurb that the person at the bookstore wrote under his books, looking at it and going, nah. And then feeling very validated ever since I've made that personal life choice.
And Leanna, it's 2,500 tons of awesome.
I added 500.
There is canceling the apocalypse, though.
No, because that's the speech Idris Elba gives. It's a very good movie. I really like Pacific Rim.
I mean, it's good in the way that, like...
monsters. We created monsters.
Guillermo del Toro understood what I wanted in that movie.
I was going to say, like, the movie is good because it understands what it is.
It doesn't take itself seriously.
Assignment 100%. It was fantastic.
He took it seriously up to the exact point that it needed to be serious, and then it was like, no, we're literally punching giant aliens with robots that we built. Like, this is what this is.
And you have, like, Ron Perlman in it as, like, this, like, black market. Like, oh, it's perfect. It's so good.
Because, and, like, Ron... He worked with him for what's the Hellboy? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was so
Which
good.
Again knows exactly what it is. At least the first one.
I haven't disliked anything I've watched by Guillermo del Toro.
Who cares? It doesn't need to be good. It's fun. But like just the fact
those kind of movies, as long a lot of things that are bad, as long as they like are self-aware, that's like half the battle. Yeah. As long as you know exactly what you are.
I mean, it's
like the definition of good on what scale. Like, if I want a really good action movie that makes me feel things, it met the assignment. That's good.
It's on a scale of 2,500 tons of awesome.
It's good for being an entertaining, dumb movie. Like, the world's best minds were like, there are giant monsters. We are going to build gigantic metal suits that we have to mind meld with each other because that makes it even more complicated. To go punch them in their faces. Like, of
we
course
don't fridge a woman, we fridge his brother. It's great.
Yeah, there you go.
It's wonderful.
And then against all odds, he has to mind melt. I don't remember what they called it.
Well, so if and when they adapt Red Rising, Ramin Djawadi should write the soundtrack because he would understand the assignment.
If anyone ever reads a book that you're like, this is Pacific Rim, can someone tell me? Because I'm also looking for that like platonic like tension, like where they don't want to be friends and they become friends, and I can't ever find anything that's quite Pacific Rim for me.
Red Rising?
No, they are not the same, but they fill a similar part in my heart in terms of pulpy time.
There's Jaegers in the series at some point, you know. Just throwing that out there. That's the thing that exists.
That's not like the thing I care about, though. I want the Idris Elba speech. I want the friendship. Like, I don't know.
You want the grizzled old veteran that's
I have watched Pacific Rim more times than is reasonable. I don't actually think you guys know this, but I mean, almost double digits.
Charlie Hunnam could definitely be a gold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
anyways, any other Red Rising thoughts, I guess?
I'm so pumped for Golden Sun.
Oh,
I need to finish my February TBR.
Do the thing we were going to do.
Good point.
Before we end the chat.
Good point.
What happened?
Giveaway.
Oh, yeah.
Have we decided what it's going to be? The question? Not the items. If anyone missed it, what we're talking about, we're giving away a mug and a pin. I have them in my community tab, like pictures of the mug and the pin that are Red Rising related. And to enter the giveaway, whatever question we come up with right now, you're going to have to answer it.
What is Charlie Hunnam's character's name in Pacific Rim?
I'm going to open this book to a random chapter. Okay. All right.
But that's something they could look up on a wiki.
I'm not going to say the chapter number. I'm going to say the
everything
chapter
is.
Okay. Well, you decide. Pick a question. This is all chaos.
Be like, what movie soundtrack should you listen to while reading Red Rising?
I'm fine with that question.
That's
the question.
Are you co-signing this, Alex?
No, veto.
Muted.
We have a 2/3 majority. We could make an amendment on the Constitution, so it doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
I didn't agree with that to begin with, so
muted.
Your rules don't exist.
I'm changing the paradigm.
There it is. Now we've come full circle.
Okay,
all right, so that's
officially.
No, the real question is how many paradigms shifted in the last hour and a half?
Who's gonna count? Okay, so if you're interested in entering the giveaway, comment. Don't do it in the chat. Comment in the comments of this like live video the name of the movie soundtrack that you should listen to while reading Red Rising, according to me. And then also include your Instagram handle so that if you win, then we can contact you to get your like shipping details. And then how long do we want to give people to enter?
75 seconds.
No.
What?
No. How about a week? Is that too long?
Okay. No, I feel like that's definitely. So should we say until 7 a.m. on Monday Pacific time? 7 a.m. Pacific time on Monday the 6th?
Sure. I won't be in the United States, so I don't really care. So.
If you were here, would it change things?
No, but I'm just not going to care. It just seems like I just picked a week because it felt like enough time that people could watch the replay who cared. So. Christy, it's not the soundtrack you would choose. It's what Leanna chose.
There is one and only answer to this question.
Yeah. Our goal is to reward people who listened to us talk for way too long.
This is one of the shorter streams that I've been on. You should see our Song of Ice and Fire chats. They go on for days.
Oh, someone commented on the Feast for Crows chat telling me that they felt bad for Jimmy because I talked over him.
I mean, you should stop interrupting people then.
I get comments like that all the time too. I think
mute yourself, Leanna. Feel bad. Quit being so rude.
Once on a live, someone in the comments said, I feel so bad that for Angela's boyfriend because of how much I talk in lives. People are rude.
Yeah.
People are real mean.
They are. At least you didn't talk about my vocal fry.
Yeah. Oh. This is my cat.
Oh.
Hello, Kitty.
His breath is really bad.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they usually are. They clean themselves with their tongues. So
it's not that; it's the food.
Stop feeding him that then.
Give him less. I'm allowed to feed them. It's a different problem.
Chonky
he's very old. Yes, he's very chonky. You apologize for saying, "Oh, Mamma Mia." Oh, to our comment. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry, it's getting late.
If you didn't talk over people so much, Angela, you'd know what we were talking about.
Seriously.
Exactly. It's my own fault. And my own problem. Insert Taylor Swift meme here.
Is that a Red Right? No, that's Simba.
Sorry. No, I'm not that much of a diehard fan. This is the line.
It does look like the sleeves that you could buy for the first three.
No, I like Red Rising.
I'm wearing Red Rising.
Well, this is not a howler, but it's close. Like it's a fox. They're called cats of the air.
That's Sophocles.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like Angela has no idea what's happening.
No, it was just on
Sophocles
top.
is the fox. Little pet.
You don't remember Sophocles with the jelly beans?
I read this in 2018. No.
Whatever.
Well, you're about to meet Sophocles and some jelly beans.
I'm pretty excited, but yeah, no, it's been a minute since I've read this series. When did Dark Age come out? Was that 2019?
Come on, Leanna.
You
have 7 seconds.
Okay, because I think I read Red Rising, the trilogy in 2018, and then I read Iron Gold and Dark Age when Dark Age came out. Whenever that
2019, was. July 30th. There you go.
Those dust jackets are awesome.
They do look nice. It's like
These ones
Mars. Yeah, there it is. There it is.
with my other Red Rising books next to them.
How many special editions of Red Rising do you have?
Well, I have the dust jackets from Juniper, and I have the sub press editions, and then I have the Red Rising book, the Barnes and Noble special edition that was just for the first book. I have the arc that was like with they came out with like 4 arcs that had the Institute's names on them. I have one of those. And then I have special editions of like Iron Gold and Dark Age.
Okay, because wasn't there like a Fairy Loot or a Lumicrate version too?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
They were just like plain hardcovers that had.
Oh, yeah, I have those. They're behind me. Yeah, the ones that like there's no dust jacket on it. It's just like it looks kind of like the Green Bone ones.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah, I have those too.
Nice.
Basically, if there is a Red Rising special edition, I have it.
When did you fall in love with the series again? Was it Golden Sun or did it take longer?
Golden Sun.
Okay, just curious.
Yes, I was like Red Rising. I don't even know if I would have read Golden Sun. Well, I wouldn't say ever, but like I wasn't like immediately going to be like, oh, I need to read Golden Sun. But I was like, oh, I might read more. And then there were some booktubers who had recently buddy read Red Rising together, and I hadn't read it with them. So they were about to read Golden Sun, and they're like, oh, you just finished Red Rising, right? Do you want to read Golden Sun with us? And I was like, oh, I guess, yeah, I could read it now. So I did. And then I was like, oh, this was amazing.
That's so fun. Yeah.
Yes. Dark Age is, I mean, all the warnings abound. It earned its name. Yeah. Dark Age is dark.
As much as I loved, I'm super excited to reread it, and I gave it 5 stars and I loved it, but I was exhausted by the end of it. Like I felt
it's also just very long.
I mean it's incredibly long, but also just like the material is dark. It is not happy.
It's also
basically like whatsoever.
I'm excited to read Lightbringer because I knew the minute I finished Dark Age, I'm like, my opinion on Dark Age is going to depend a lot on what follows it. You know, like, because it's such a dark. I mean, it, like you guys said, it earns its name. Because I think I actually gave it 2 stars my first time because I was really exhausted.
Yeah, I mean, there's.
Did you just say you gave Dark Age 2 stars?
Correct.
I mean, I don't agree with that, but
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. This is from so long ago. I haven't reread it. It could become better.
And I think the one thing I remember dragging from, it's not a spoiler. He gets very graphic in his descriptions by that point in the series that like some of it felt like, dude, like you could like, not even that I was like grossed out by it, but like reading certain descriptions, I was just like, do you even need this here? Like, this is obnoxious. How much you're detailing, like how much blood is coming out and like describing intestines. I was just like, why?
A lot of it, but it's like, when it's just blood and stuff, it's like I've read so many books where it's like, okay, someone's bleeding. But he comes up with pretty creative ways to have people be miserable. And you're like, oh, it's still going. Oh no.
Yeah. I also do recognize that a lot of my 2 stars was based off expectation versus reality because I kept wanting this second saga of Red Rising to be like the first saga in terms of like my vacation read book. And it's no longer that at all. Yeah. But I brought the tome with me on vacation and it was the only book I brought and I was like, you are not a fun time.
It's not.
But that's also why I respect them so much, is because like instead of like, again, not just resting on laurels, but just like, oh, this is what's fun about the series, he's like, realistically, how would these characters be this many years on? How would the society progress this many years on? Where would this world be? What would this be like? And if it's not fun to contemplate how realistically it would be, sucks. That's how it would be. Like, oh, it's not fun for you to consider this character isn't fun anymore. Well, that's how life be sometimes. Like, it's like,
yeah. So I'm excited to read Iron Gold and Dark Age, knowing its project now, because I do recognize my first time reading them. It's like, I wanted them to be something they weren't.
Yeah.
And I didn't have BookTube to tell me that. I was just.
That's why I think Dark Age is the most like quality thing he's ever written. Like his talent as a writer
is way better.
Yeah, but like Golden Sun is still the most fun out of all of them to read. Mm-hmm. So it's like my favorite, but I think the best one is Dark Age.
Golden Sun also has tons of twists. You're just like, oh my god, this is cool, and that's cool, and this is cool.
The entire time reading Golden Sun the first time, I was like, what? No, no way. What?
I'm really excited because I have forgotten. I know there are twists in Golden Sun, but I have forgotten almost all of them.
Like Sophocles and the jelly beans.
I don't know if that's a twist. It's just an animal
No one
companion.
expected it. And out of
No
nowhere,
one expects
fox.
the red fox. But also having read Dark Age and how dark it is, the fact that he wrote an entire draft of the book after it and then scrapped the entire draft because he said it was too dark.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. Is like,
And there's some pretty depraved shit that happens in that book.
I genuinely want to know what was in that draft that he scrapped that he thought was too dark. Like,
join his Patreon. I actually don't know if he has one, but if he does, you should join it and ask.
Lit Shit Escalates has a Patreon that's like not directly for him, but it's like for the merch that like they sell. So it's not really like access to him. But he does AMAs.
Yeah. I just remember everybody, like, as I was reading Dark Age, when I was in Discord with a bunch of people that had already read it, they just kept sending me tree emojis and like pictures of trees. And I was just like, why are you doing this? And then I finally got to the point of which I was like, oh, okay. That's
messed up.
Was not expected.
Yeah. No. So I'm excited for that, although I think
Is this a reference to Hyperion?
Yes. This has to be. The only other sci-fi author who cares about John Keats is Dan Simmons.
But I feel like I usually hear people's favorite is Morningstar. I'm always the one
that's
that
unpopular at all. I think it's a really good series ender, and people like series enders.
Like, I always feel like I'm the one with the rare opinion. The Golden Sun, I think, is better than Morningstar.
I think on BookTube, people say that more than I think what it is in real life. Does that make sense? You know how BookTube has like a weird filter?
Wait,
of, like,
which way around?
Like when people think that Twitter is like the world's opinion, and then you walk outside and they're just like, "What's Twitter?"
So you're saying
BookTube
internet people like Golden Sun, like the bookish internet likes Golden Sun, but I think people who consume the series who are not on the bookish internet really like Morningstar.
The Vox Populi likes Morningstar, and we Golds.
I see what you did there.
Sure, correct. Yeah, I don't even.
I do remember crying a little bit at the end of Morningstar, though, so I'll just leave that there.
I don't remember if I had a favorite. I mean, to be quite honest, the book I remembered the most of the three is Red Rising, so I don't know what that says.
Golden Sun, for obvious reasons that we'll talk about next chat, reminded me of A Song of Ice and Fire and some of the like big moments that happened where I was just like, holy shit, like this is what this series is doing.
Yeah, there are so many twists. I did cry in Golden Sun the first time. I don't think I have in any of like I don't think I did when I reread it, and I doubt I will this time, but the first time I did. Yeah. Where are we doing chat number 2?
I don't care.
Either
do
one.
You want it? Wait, which one do you want? Morningstar or Golden Sun, Alex? I'll let you pick, and I'll take the other one.
He's wearing blue.
So does that mean Morningstar? Because the
your choice.
It means whatever you want it to mean.
It means I don't know. I'll do Golden Sun. That's fine.
Okay, then I will do Morningstar.
Okay.
But you're wearing blue.
I didn't know the rules. I'm sorry. I'm very sorry.
Okay. Cool. When we do it for April's Morningstar, we'll either have to do it the second to last weekend in April or like the first weekend in May, because I think the other weekend I'm going to Chicago.
Okay. Yeah. So now we know Lightbringer's coming out this year. When is Red God coming out?
Never.
Do we know?
Never.
Because he's going to rewrite it 3 times.
Okay, every time I hear the name Red God, I get Rap God stuck in my head. I don't like it.
Well,
I'm also excited to start Golden Sun. It was so hard not to start Golden Sun, because
I know there's books on my February TBR that I need to read, and I'm like, but I could read Golden Sun.
I spent like half of this month wanting to just read Golden Sun because it was like the type of candy I wanted, and I was just like, I can't, because I will then talk about Golden Sun at the live show.
February ends in 2 days, Leanna, so
I know. I'm so stressed.
I don't know how many books you're planning on reading, but
5.
What?
Those have like, I mean,
and one of them is The Blackest Heart by Brian Lee Durden.
Oh,
that's
good.
One
a nice
of them.
short book. That's like 1,100 pages long. No, it's like 800
my
pages,
last book, I only have 50 pages left of it, and I can do what I want. I'm reading like a novella.
I need to finish 2 Towers, and then I'm going to read Golden Sun.
I'm so screwed.
You're not screwed. It's a TBR. It doesn't care.
But there's like lives and stuff.
Well, move the lives back.
No.
Like we learned at the end of this book, it doesn't matter.
I just won't sleep. It's fine.
That's
I think you should move the lives and sleep.
You could just be like Alan and be like, guys, I didn't read the book. I'm sorry.
I will not become the thing that I hate.
That reminds me, you guys were doing the Northern something series, right? With Kuko. The third book that you've been loving, Leanna. I don't remember the name. How to say it?
The Cuckoo?
Yeah, the Cuckoo.
Under the Northern Sky series.
I want to read it because I want to really like it, but I'm almost positive this is not where our Venn diagram is. So I'm terrified.
You could just like take over from Alan because he's not going to read it.
I don't think
just sub in.
But you guys have already talked about the wolf, haven't you?
Yes, you sub in at Spider. You're like the halftime sub in.
I'm the only Vienna obviously, but like of the other 3 that were part of this read along, I'm the only one that's read the Spider.
Jesse's read the Cuckoo, so she's like, I'll join you for that. And I'm like, I don't know if we're ever going to get there. So, okay.
One step at a time, please.
Well, so my problem is my next big chonky series I'm getting back into is Dandelion Dynasty. So I just don't actually think it's happening. I don't think I could do both because they're both kind of. I'm sorry. Maybe it stares at me every time it's at my bookstore. And it's at the bookstore. My bookstore has it on the shelves.
Reward your bookstore.
I don't own the Spider.
This great decision.
I guess I have it on Kindle. I guess that counts as that, but I need to buy it physically.
It enables you to count the number of instances of Upstart.
It did. It was a lot.
Okay, so Golden Sun on the Severo Fangirls channel, also known as Alex Nieves.
Yep.
Where we will have a pre-prepared trivia question for the next giveaway.
Nope.
No.
Don't sign us up for that.
And if you didn't know, any Discord conversations happen on my Discord, which you can find on Leanna's community tab or in any of my video descriptions. But you have to interact with the Rulebot emoji or else you will not see the channels. This is not hard. You read books. You can read read that page.
No one reads rules.
What she said.
I know, but they could at least note that I don't even care if they're just like, yes, of course I accept. You just have to click the stupid thing.
Just go yell at Jimmy and Alan. It's not my fault.
It is. Everything's your fault. But for Golden Sun, remember, the Pacific Rim 2 soundtrack is now...
No! Pacific Rim 2 is not Pacific Rim.
Fine.
Unless you mean Pacific Rim TOO, meaning like also
again,
listen to Pacific Rim for Golden Sun.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, fine. Well, I'm going to listen to the Pacific Rim soundtrack now.
Have you ever? You've listened to it, right? It's so good.
I've seen the movie a bunch of times. I've never actually watched anything beyond the first one. So.
You don't need to. This first movie is perfect in its own right.
Pacific Rim 2.
Now I just have the dun 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 like just right there.
John Boyega was in this one.
Yeah.
Charlie Day. Oh,
he's not great in it, but he's.
I remember why I didn't watch the second one because I knew too much about it, and I was like, I'm not watching that shit.
Well, the second one also doesn't it's not, and it's largely not the same creative team.
Well, it's not Guillermo del Toro. It's not the same actors. It's not Ramin Djawadi scoring it. It's just like
it's not the same creative team, so it's definitely like a straight to DVD endeavor. And
yeah.
Not that we have a straight to DVD culture anymore, but
straight to streaming.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't even make it to streaming. Sometimes they make it and then it just never goes on anymore because the streaming world's getting mean. I really wanted to watch that Batgirl movie that they've already made.
I'm upset that
canceled that they made
that they've like, already produced all the way through.
I know. And they were like, yeah, that's never coming out.
I was planning to finally catch up on Rule of Wolves because I saw the first season and I was going to watch the second season. And then HBO decided to remove their own shows from HBO. And I was just like,
I think we will get those when they do their free thing because they're going to set up their own like free Warner Brothers thing. And they are going to put like some of their big shows on that to get people to use it. But like, it's still crap. Like,
I will continue to use HBO for The House of the Dragon and then cancel it for 2 years and then re-up.
You're not watching
I am watching Last of Us. I am watching that, but then I'm going to cancel it because I'm not going to watch my backlog of HBO shows for the next 2 years.
The day after I started watching The Last of Us, I found mold on my bread. It was very upsetting.
Well,
I mean, I Last of Us makes you think that fungus is really bad, but as I told Ryan, it's like, we actually do have antifungal medication. It's okay.
No, you have to bomb the city, Angela. There's no other way.
I mean,
like dandruff is caused by fungus.
We're doomed.
I mean, the entire premise is literally impossible, so it's fine. Like that can't affect people. So
what was
let's
funny?
let's not go down the reality police.
It's just really funny because as someone in biomedical sciences, I do usually turn my brain off, but they just kept reminding me how possible this was in like very dramatic ways. And I'm like, and then Ryan was kidding with me, being like, it's because they ate the bread. And I'm like, what? Kid, don't eat the bread. And I was just really stressed in the first episode.
What I always find unbelievable about all those kinds of movies and shows, including The Last of Us, is like when the thing happens, whatever the thing is, it happens in like 24 hours. And I'm like, unless it's like an actual biological attack of like bombings and like this is like human beings setting this off. If you're saying nature is doing this, which a lot of them are, when it happens overnight, it's like, no, like that's just not how that would happen. It would happen.
It's not
like,
how distributions work. Yeah, no, it's no, but that's okay because The Last of Us is not about the reality of the situation. It's about following the people that get stuck in it, and that is really good TV. So
it's about fridging.
Yeah, that too. Multiple fridges. There's at least 2 of them.
So now just every female that dies in anything was just the fridge. They're all just refrigerators.
Just change our name to Smeg.
I hate that name.
All right. Well, Red Rising is great.
It's this book.
There's no funguses in it. At least not a lot. I feel like aren't there jokes about Severo having funguses growing in his shoes or something?
Probably because Severo's disgusting.
Probably.
Disgusting.
Oh, my funny Pierce Brown fact, because apparently Pierce Brown is attractive, which I didn't know. Because I kept
He's on the back of the book.
When I first read this book, it was an ebook. I own it and like, but here's the thing, his last name's Brown. I thought of Dan Brown, who's decidedly unattractive. So I thought this series was written by like a 40-year-old, like reasonably average looking
Pierce
fella.
Brown can't be attractive because he reminds me of Dan Brown, who isn't Pierce Brown. So therefore, Pierce Brown is.
It doesn't make sense, okay? But I will tell you that was the thought tree, okay?
Don't mention trees. Trees have been ruined by Alex.
Yeah.
Wait, but so that was your fun fact about Pierce Brown, that he's attractive?
It's not a fun fact. No, it's a fun fact about how messed up my brain is.
Okay.
Like, I literally thought it was like just written by like a very average white author, because like most authors who write sci-fi fantasy have a very average.
On that note, I have semi-convinced Hillary from Bookborn to give Red Rising another go because she thought he was like an older man, and I was like, he was like 23 when he wrote Red Rising and kind of rage wrote it for himself. She was like, this makes so much sense. You know what? Actually, I might keep reading it because like, okay, I can forgive that. I understand. She thought he was like some much older man who'd written many books and like was Red Rising.
A lot of sci-fi authors. They're like old white guys.
I just like Pierce Brown is kind of like internet, like he's on the internet and like people always talk about how attractive and young he is. It's just like it's always hard for me to believe that people don't know this.
Yeah.
Well, and then like I guess also in a similar vein, like Brent Weeks wrote Night Angel, which is his first series, and like I don't like that series because it's too like fan fiction-y, melodrama-y for me. And so like this is like the perfect form of like that type of thing is Red Rising, because I've read the other version where I'm like, this is too edgelord-ish. I can't handle you. I don't know if either of you read any Brent Weeks.
But. No. But then 80 feet to the right of edgelord is Jay Kristoff.
I have chosen already to not read Jay Kristoff.
I just
you don't
have
to convince me.
I have to say, though, for anyone, because like not every author that has a good book is like an interesting person to meet or talk to, you know? It's like, oh, you want to because you like their book, but it's like not necessarily, just like not every author should read the audiobook of their book, you know? It's like specific, like, yeah. So like if anyone has the opportunity, Pierce Brown is just a very fun person to meet. Like he's very like engaging and excited to meet you and has a lot to say. So like if you ever have the opportunity to go to a signing, I highly recommend it just as an entertaining experience, because like he is an entertaining person, and I sincerely do not understand where his energy comes from, because he goes like a mile a minute, like barely has breath to speak, just like nonstop, and then does the meet and greet with each person where he shakes your hand and is so excited to meet you and who's your favorite character and like why are you here and it's so great to like meet the fans and like who should he sign it to, and he's just like an energizer bunny. It's absolutely insane.
Man, he's only 35. That's wild. Sorry,
I
just like look as someone who just turned 30. I'm like, wow, okay.
It's all downhill from there.
I don't know. I've been thriving so far, but
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Some other interviews are so cringe to watch.
But like
Pierce Brown, he thinks he's cool, and he's just a giant nerd. And it just becomes very clear that he's a giant nerd as the longer he talks.
Interesting. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I've liked most author things I've gone to that I've chosen to, but like, I don't get to go to that many. Like, I got to meet Ken Liu, and he was fascinating. But he was really fun to talk to. He like talked about the law as like our best technology for like 20 minutes, and like I was completely like, I was there. I was like, wow, I never thought of law as technology, but sure, tell me more. Like, whatever. Just go ahead. We are very off topic though, so anyone who's still here,
we've
props.
been off topic for a while.
I was on topic talking about Pierce Brown, and then you started talking about Ken Liu. This is not my fault.
I mean, Ken Liu is pretty great. He lives close to me, so I get to see him because he comes to my books.
Pierce Brown lives close to me. So.
I was about to say, he's like, what, in Colorado or something?
Like, he got the exact same, flood watch alert on his phone. And after I got that flood watch alert, I was on my phone because I was reading Red Rising. And I got my phone started buzzing with this, like, don't leave your house until 10 o'clock tonight. It's flood watch. And so I was like, well, I'm already on my phone. So I open all my socials and I go to Instagram, and Pierce Brown doesn't like post that much. And I saw that he had a new story. So I opened his story, and he had a screenshot of the exact same flood warning watch and was like, ah, shoot, I guess I'm going to have to stay in and play Cyberpunk.
Just like the rest of us. He also gets flood warnings.
No, he like lives close enough to me that it's the exact same like alert.
So did you find out where he lived then?
He lives next door.
Oh, that's sweet.
Why isn't he on Alive? You should invite him.
He's playing Cyberpunk.
When we get to Lightbringer, we should have a special guest.
So Leanna's now signing up for that. Pierce Brown will be on the Lightbringer live show.
Honestly, like if you ever got him like on an interview or like on a live, it would be so easy for you because you wouldn't have to say or do anything. You would ask him to introduce himself, and 2 hours later you'd be like, well, thanks for showing up, everyone. Good night. Because he would have just been
Sounds like you should do that for your channel. You've got some author interview stuff. Do it.
I'll just send him the link, press record, and be like, see you in 2 hours. All right. Well and truly, I think we're out of Red Rising things to say.
Yeah.
Get hyped.
Until the next book.
Howler for Life. Omnisphere Lupus. They don't say Omnisphere Lupus in Red Rising, do they?
Nope.
It's so weird because it's so like, that's the Red Rising slogan. And it's not even in Red Rising.
No.
Get out of here, Urza. This is unacceptable. Pierce Brown on the Cuckoo Live. Or he'd find things to say. He probably knows the history of the bird. What?
Does Alan just not like the series? It feels like a series he might like, but I'm unsure.
He says he likes the wolf.
I like the wolf.
I don't know, because it's also underhyped, and he's all about the underhyped book. Like, I don't know. It just feels like
it's hyped by me, and that's the opposite of what he likes.
Because it's definitely not a very hyped book in any sphere. Like,
no, just me. Abercrombie was like a chatterbox. Is that what you mean?
We almost went the entire time without talking about first.
I didn't bring up Abercrombie at all.
That is true.
There's always a convenient excuse to talk about
an hour and 48 minutes. That's actually a record. Like, actually pretty good. That's going to be the question of the next live.
Also, Pierce Brown disagrees with me about where you should start with First Law.
Where does he think you should start with First Law?
First book.
So, okay, well, since we're talking about Brandon Sanderson and Abercrombie and Pierce Brown, when I went to like this like a really small signing, because it was like really last minute, so it was like quite intimate, and he could just kind of like dick around and talk to people instead of like this big like auditorium of people. It was just like at Barnes and Noble, like announced 2 days before it was happening. So people were asking him like, oh, like, have you read Brandon Sanderson, or like, which is your favorite Sanderson? Pierce Brown was like, I don't really read Sanderson. That's not really my thing. He's like, but Joe Abercrombie. I really like Joe Abercrombie. And then people were talking about like where to start with, like, do they need to start with First Law, or can they start in the middle somewhere? And like there was like me and a couple of friends who were like towards the front, and as soon as he said Abercrombie, we're like, yes, Abercrombie. And he turns to us, he's like, yeah, Abercrombie. And he's like, so we're like, where should they start? He's like,
Sharp
I think
ends.
he was like, I think the Heroes. And we were like, no, Best Served Cold. And he was like, Best Served Cold. He was like, nah, the Heroes is way better. Best Served Cold isn't that good. We were like, you are wrong, sir. It's Best Served Cold. So then like the rest of the people there were just like, are we talking about a First Law now?
I mean, honestly, you can tell how much First Law he read before he wrote Iron Gold and Dark Age, which is probably why I was so jarred, because I wasn't picking up an Abercrombie, and suddenly...
But I would just like you to know that I can even derail a Pierce Brown book signing with Abercrombie and First Law chatter. Nowhere is safe.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Dedication to the craft.
I'm probably, if I ever continue First Law, I'm going to have to skip the standalones temporarily. It's stopping me.
You don't need to, though. They're good books.
I've tried to read Best Served Cold like 3 times, Alex. It's hard. I've gotten like 100 pages in each time.
Just do the audio.
That's what I did. How do you like his voice for that woman? It drives me up the wall.
Which woman?
The main character.
Monza?
Yes. The one on the revenge quest. I think it's
That's
just...
fine.
I don't like it.
I mean, most men doing women's voices aren't
I think he does
usually
pretty
great.
good. Like, I hate when Steve West does women's voices because he does this like weird like falsetto type thing, and I'm like, oh, don't do that.
I mean, it's more like, I don't think anyone does it really well when they do their opposite gender voices per se. It's just that I was consistently annoyed by it. That's the problem, right? And it's just taste.
I feel like most male audiobook narrators, though, just like soften their voice, and that's just what all women sound like. And then I listened to the Greenbone Saga, like I did a mix of reading and audio, and it's a woman narrator, and every dude just sounds the same because she just kind of talks like this. Like,
wait, your Greenbone Saga was a female narrator?
Mine was, yeah.
Mine was a male.
What?
That's what's no, mine was decidedly a man.
Wait, no, I'm thinking of Bobby Gore, I think. I don't.
Okay, that makes more sense because Greenbone Saga was not.
Hold
I reread the first 2 audio.
Gore, then. It was one of them, but it was every male character sounded identical.
But so would you say that Stephen Pacey softens his voice for Pharaoh?
I didn't mind how he did Pharaoh because Pharaoh's, Pharaoh.
Like, fucking pink.
And I mean, I didn't love.
Did you just say Pharaoh sucks?
Yes, I did.
Pharaoh's fine. I don't have strong opinions about Pharaoh. I think Giselle's hysterical, and I just like watching him struggle. Like Giselle's who I love to watch suffer.
It was the Poppy War trilogy because it's narrated by Emily Wu Zeller. So like Rin was good.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, she does. I like her as a narrator, but not because she has good voices. I just like her cadence.
So do I. But like every male character just sounded like a gruff, like I'm.
No, I listened to Strange Beasts of China, which was her as a narrator, and I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about audiobook narrators, like I like Tim Gerard Reynolds in general as a narrator, but I would never have picked him to be first person present tense 16-year-old Darrow because he sounds like an Irish grandpa.
Yeah.
And it's like,
true.
He's 16.
Fix your freaking focus, Leanna.
I look better blurred. It's fine. Oh, I got a camera that shoots in 4K, and I am not enjoying editing footage of myself.
It takes 4K. So much longer to export and upload, and it's a YouTube video for about books.
Well, I'm just talking about vanity and looking at myself in 4K and it not being great. Like I don't need to see all that.
I don't shoot in 4K because the Canon M50 is terrible at 4K, and it goes in and out of focus constantly.
But no, I think what I might do for First Law is I might try the first book in the new trilogy, and if I really, really like it, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm all in on the First Law train. I'm going to then not continue the trilogy, go back to the standalones, and then...
It's a terrible idea.
It's either that or I never continue in First Law. These are your options.
Well, then try.
Very well. I accept your terms.
Like, sometimes I just push through the entirety of Wheel of Time. I'm being very picky right now.
I mean, if you can push through Wheel of Time, you can't finish Best Served Cold. Why are we friends? Get out of here.
You read Winter's Heart, Crossroads of Twilight.
Winter's Heart is not bad because Rand asks for help. Crosswords
You
of
read
Twilight
the
is bad,
slog.
though.
You can read Best Served Cold.
The thing is I read them, but the audiobook was at like 3 times speed. Okay, like it was.
So you do what most people do, where they're like, let's just get this done.
Like I could tell you things that happened, but was I
It's
like
fine.
paying attention?
Nothing happens in those books. Don't worry. There's like a paragraph of stuff that happens in 3,000 pages of the slog.
No, Crosswords of Twilight's a big problem. Especially because of how much he still wanted to do. I'm like, then you should have put it in Crosswords of Twilight because there was nothing there. Yeah. Same, Matt, same. I think also it doesn't help that it's a revenge story that I know it's probably going to be subversive in some ways because it's a first law book.
I mean, I know Monza is technically the main character of Best Served Cold.
I know it's all about shivers, which is why I want to read them one day. I understand.
You know that after Glokta, my favorite character is Shivers.
I understand. Shivers is important and I do like him. It's just that like it's so long. It's like so big.
It is a big book. I just really like the dice scene.
Because like First Law in general, like he keeps it pretty tight. His books aren't usually very long.
Yeah.
I mean, compared to other fantasy.
Best Served Cold is a chunky boy.
But it's a standalone. Like the First Law trilogy, like is kind of like one book in 3 parts. So like he tells the whole story in Best Served Cold. So I feel like I can forgive it for being a little longer.
The First Law trilogy is a series I appreciate more than I like because I think it's a really fascinating project. And like I like the first book more on reread and the third book less, which was the exact opposite of my first read experience.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if that's common, but that was certainly my experience.
Because the third book feels so fulfilling on the first read. And then on your reread, you're like, oh, this is satire. This is great. All right.
But it's also the third book is the one where you get answers, and the first time you're like, oh, but now that you already know, you're like, I mean, I know these are the answers. Like, I'm aware.
Yeah. So I do like that trilogy. I don't think I need to ever consume it again right now. I can't do what you do, Leanna, every year, but
every year.
She reads First Law every year.
You mean like
it's not like an actual commitment of mine, but it kind of just works out that way. Like Mara
rereads it quarterly.
Mara has committed to reading First Law now that she's done with Realm of the Elderlings. So
yeah, because you finished that way earlier than planned. Because I saw Mara's video where she just read the entire last trilogy.
Well, like I read the one we were supposed to read for this month before she did, and I was like, I don't know if we can like wait until next month. And then she shot ahead of me and finished all of it. I was like, oh, okay, I will just then catch up as well.
I'm excited. I get to Rain Wilds soon, like April.
Hey Alex, how's Mad Ship treating you?
I haven't gotten to it yet.
How are you? Anyways,
I read Ship of Magic and then for no reason just didn't read.
I was about to say, I assume you liked it. Maybe.
It was fine. I liked it. I want to read more Fitz books more than Ship of Magic. I don't like seafaring tales generally. I don't care about boats. I don't
when
like
you finish the live ships, you're back to Fitz in the.
You're very back to Fitz. So much Fitz. As someone who, I learned in reading Tawny Man that I put a lot on Fitz. I put a lot of my own emotional trauma onto Fitz because Fitz was acting like
Does he not have enough?
He was acting like my own real life dad who I have to be tame around because I need a relationship with this man, but I don't need a relationship with Fitz.
All right.
No, it's a really good trilogy. You're gonna really like it when you get there.
I mean, there's plenty of series that I've started and enjoyed and just ended up reading other things and just haven't gone back to it for no real reason, but I will. Because I love her writing, but just haven't gone back to it.
Chorus of Dragons.
Like I'm like halfway through The Expanse and just haven't read a book in months because
I feel like Red Rising is the only series I can think of right now. That doesn't mean it's the only one that obviously it's not the only one, but like it's so rare to find not just first person, but first person present tense. I feel like it's so unusual.
I recently read, it's usually, I think it's published more in young adult because recently I read the Cruel Prince trilogy, I think, which also was first person present, which was a time that was so boring. I expected it to be way more fun than it was. Like, it's so popular. I'm just like, where's any of the fun? So, props to it for being fun.
I was promised fun. Fun is not being had.
Okay, normally when young adult is very, very, very astronomically popular, it's a dramatic time. And like, you know, it's not good maybe, but it's like at least like a page turner. And this was like such a boring short series. It was like 900 pages. And I'm like, I'm so bored.
Why did you keep reading?
For that YouTube video I did about the Goodreads Awards, because 2 of them were winners. So I read 2 of them.
See, this is why I don't sign up for projects that force me to read books I don't want to read. Enough people make me read books that I don't want to read as it is.
I don't have regrets, mainly because Holly Black was a hole in like my knowledge, and it was really quick. Like I read one of them in one night while doing a jigsaw puzzle because they are like really short books. They're just really boring short books. And also that video is doing really well, so at least there's that.
Get those sweet, sweet views.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It's YouTube, right?
I mean, we all do BookTube for the money.
That's what people seem to think. It's sweet, sweet money.
Sweet AdSense revenue.
That food just pays for my cat's food. That's how much money I get. Cat food money.
Well, you can only afford the stinky kind, apparently.
Listen, there's renal cat food, and then it has to not have grain because of hair. It's a lot. Wait till your cat gets old, and then you have to deal with things.
All right. Red Rising. We're at 2 hours.
Red Rising.
Red has risen.
Mine's over there.
Golden
I'm not getting
sun.
it.
This is not mine. This is my library's.
This is not. It's signed, but Kaz knocked it off of like my bed or whatever, so it's like got a like fold in it now because the.
It's also loved by Kaz.
Incorrect. But
What? I'm just laughing at chat because that's so random. Anyway.
Yeah, that is random.
I don't know what's happening anymore. Chat's getting weird now.
I think
this live has officially gone on too long, which we already knew, but
they're literally telling us we need Jesus right now, so we should rethink
I was
our
gonna say
lives.
like Hadrian's in the chat.
And then someone thinks we're a video game channel, so like we're really out of our depths.
I am known to have played a video game.
Yeah, let's wrap this one up.
So bye.